I don't like that.
It was nasty.
Oh, you grabbed the shoulder.
I did, that's what I did over here. I was freaking out, I was like. Got my helmet.
Híjole.
Want to go down and over, you can find the damn bike path.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a highway, I just don't like.
That adds 12 miles.
About what, going down
I
to.
could go this way.
Go down all the way to Garrett's and then take a
Right.
left.
Over the bridge and then go back.
Do some cross training.
That's right.
Put your bike in the shoulder and run across the bridge.
Ay, Dios.
And immigration.
Oh, yeah, la amiga. Oh, yeah. Board member taken by immigration for no.
Paper says I'll give him $2,200 and let him go.
And I think got any additional kids for 1,200.
Oh, my
There we
goodness.
go. Did you eat?
No, I'm not.
Kidding me. Get so angry at all.
Ask the guys. Ask any of your fellow. heads people you can-
We're getting there. We
Oh,
got a new clock, huh?
yeah, big one.
Get it back up. I think it's accurate.
Is it? Yeah, 8:59. Okay, it is.
Is that for the governing board for our old eyes? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, is that for the old timers?
That's very. Okay, yes, I do. So,
Yeah, it's a-
it's 9 o'clock, it's October 21st, and it's time to call the governing board meeting to order. Here at the Santa Cruz Valley Unified School District Governing Board Room. At Plaza de Lito Galindo, Rio, Arizona. Please stand for the pledge. And Ms. Underville, would you please lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Susan Bogan.
Present.
Bill Kramer,
I am here, sir.
Brad Beach. Lourdes Vasquez,
Present.
and I'm here, so we have a forum. Adoption of agenda. Okay, do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Moved. Second.
I have a motion second, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Approval of the consent agenda. Any government board member have anything they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Should we discuss? Bogan?
No.
Vasquez,
None, thank you.
Kramer?
No.
None either. So do I hear a motion to pass the consent agenda as approved?
So moved.
Yes, presented, excuse me.
Sorry. So moved.
A second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Study session, Mr. Rico.
Mr. President, I want to thank everybody for being.
Have any questions? Ms. Morgan? Kramer? Beach?
None.
I don't either, so we can just jump right in. Alright.
So it's, get different things, topics that the board.
Oh, the link in the PowerPoint, Shannon, should go to them. Not using it. 5305. Which is the code of conduct, which is all of it.
This is the code of conduct. There would be questions or recommendations for the meeting of the board.
Give me a second, because I'm trying to get there.
Have this.
The agenda and. And, streamline with what other schools have.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm not sure with the principals, if they had any issues with any of the policies. Even the dress code looks pretty standard.
Yeah, and that's what, and I think that's what we wanted to just make sure we give the board the opportunity to see what. Well, I know that we had some questions, making sure we're following the matrix, and enacting that, as well as anytime that there needs to be reports made to law enforcement, which we.
No comments, thank you.
The one with the number 30, like the one with the cell phone. Okay. It's, okay, it says here that the students are not allowed, to have their electronic devices in the classroom unless it's, unless the teacher lets them and whatever. And that it should always be in their purses, but what about during passing times? What about during, their lunch and stuff like that? And there's nothing that specifies if they're okay with, you know what I'm saying? A student could say, well, or a parent can say, well, it doesn't say that he can't use it during lunch, or he can't use it during passing time, or whatever. That's just one thing that's kind of like a little bit vague for me. Everything else looks really good, even with the dress code and all that. And I know that the dress code has improved dramatically at the high school. It was good job, guys. You
That's
know,
number 30, correct?
I'm talking about number 30 with the cell phones, okay, because, you know, the students, there, it says there that they're not supposed to use them, that they're supposed to, but it doesn't say anything during passing times. And you see the kids with them during their lunch hour, during their, you know, passing periods and when they're with, I mean, they're social, they're with the, you know, but is it something that's going to come back and, you know, that's my only concern. I don't know how you see that, you know, but you know, I don't really see a problem in the middle schools or anything like that. Because I think the kids are more, you know, as to taking them out than they are at the high school. So that's just a little area that I see a little bit vague, but.
And that's a great point, Ms. Vasquez, because I think that's the question that we have really had to discuss is how strict we want to become with the overall cell phone policy. And I've mentioned previously that there are some states that now have cell phone lockers, which we've looked at that, and for us to implement something like that, it'll be $30,000 to $50,000.
That's something that,
And what they do is, since they're on campus, they have to put it in the pouch, magnetically closed. And then at the end of the day, they would go to a station that would release their phone. So they would not have access to the phone during the day. Now, some question has been about security, like if there was a lockdown situation. Teachers do have the ability in their classroom, to have the ability to unlock the cell phone cases as well. But again, that's a bigger expense.
Oh, no,
that
no.
We would.
and I don't think we're at that point. I mean, with the kids, I think that our kids, you know, and our parents, basically our parents are the ones that are going to be supporting us, you know, because that's what they want. They want our kids to, you know, to do good in school and whatever. And I just think that that's only like a little vague here. I don't think we need to go that far, but as long as the kids know that, you know, it's not allowed in certain areas. And I know that there are teachers that some of them that they do use the cell phones in their classrooms because they need to research, they need to do this or whatever, you know, and that's fantastic that they have the opportunity to have, you know, the IT, you know, more for them and be able to use it, whether they're in school or out of school, but that's the only thing I see, okay, that,
And again, I think that, you know, I think you and I went to a presentation, where we saw, a person that is part of a lawsuit currently, with certain school districts, to stop, the ability to use things like TikTok, Snapchat, even, different messaging, across the platforms, at school sites, because that is the big thing for bullying.
Yeah.
Cyberbullying has become one of the, like, has increased, like, since COVID's even 80% increase in cyberbullying with cell phone use. And so and then that's where some districts have banned it during lunch, passing periods, things like that, because of what happens during lunch. You're taking pictures of people putting now with filters and all the other things that they can do. And it causes a lot of fights, other issues. And so some districts have, again, banned it during the passing periods as well as lunch time. So again, that's up to the board if that's something that you would like us to implement, but I don't know if any of the administrators have any input on that, because we can make this policy and make this rule, but then enforcing it. So, you know, that's the concern I have today. So
as I look at it right now, it's like Ms. Vasquez said, during class time. So it would be lunchtime, passing period, whether the principals want that extra duty or policing the phones during that time. So I don't know if it's a problem or.
If it's okay, may I? Can I talk sitting here?
Sure.
yeah, that's why we set it up.
I have a high school junior, a 8th grader and a 5th grader. And they all play different sports and they're involved in their sport year long. And I text them, hey, your mom's gonna pick you up. My 10-year-old, you need to go to this classroom after school because this substitute teacher is gonna take you home. So I guess my thought from a personal basis is I need to be able to communicate with my kids, and I guess I could call the front office and leave a message with the front office. And you guys get it. So from a personal standpoint, I need to communicate with my kid. And I need to communicate with kids and send them messages regarding who's gonna pick you up. Send us messages. Hey, wrestling practice ends at 6 o'clock. Pick me up, cheer practices at Copperview, not SHS today. Like I count on communication with my family.
And I think that every parent has that same issue, or a lot of parents have the same issue, you know, it's just.
That's the first thing I'm thinking of right now when we're talking about minimum or eliminating lunchtime cell phone use, passing period cell phone use, just from a personal standpoint. I need that.
And to me, the way it reads is during class time, which means that other times there's no issue, it's during class.
I'm gonna add on that. Before we ban cell phones from being used during class, our network needs to be working all the time. And it's not, so, I'm fine, I'll enforce whatever cell phone policy you want. I would strongly reconsider any policy eliminating cell phone use during class. We know every classroom has adequate Wi-Fi connection so kids can use their devices, right? Everyone's got these powerful devices. They can't always use them. You ask teachers at Rio Rico High School, many of them always have a backup plan. They'll if they plan to use their Chromebook, they will also have a backup. That's my 2 cents for this time.
John, that one.
Yeah, I just want to echo and add, I mean, I think based on what Mr. Benoit mentioned, I think our policies currently, right, there's that element of teacher provide that, because in those situations where network might not be accessible, then that's a resource. I think what Mr. Benoit was speaking about is exactly what we have. And I think, to me, I would just like to bring to the conversation, the question of the why, right? The why behind everything we do. I think policies, yes, they're there, but ultimately is what are we trying to instruct our students and what do we want them to learn from the process, whether it's dress code, whether it's cell phone use, because the reality is cell phone in our work, I mean, we get a cell phone stipend, right? It's part of our job, right? So it's also that we have come to a point where we learn, we look around, all of us have our phones out. Right, I think it's learning how to use it. I think the device itself, but is really educating our students and how to use it in a way that is appropriate, that is a resource, and that ultimately is not, disrupting the process. So I think it's just the one behind it, and that's, I think it's important to educate our students. And then each level, for example, at the middle schools, they leave their backpacks in the classroom, and I know that's something that really has for making the transition from high school to the middle school is really great in the sense of the cell phones and posting, we're not, always chasing our tails with, the cyberbullying, the messaging, the Snapchatting, because it's the reality is we're never gonna catch up with the reality behind it. I mean, Snapchat's gone, but you have to reach Snapchat. You've had to do a formal request and they get it to you. So for the middle, it's been great for us because we have minimal issues with cyberbullying. Even doing that, we've had a little Missy account that showed up on TikTok. We went through the process. I had Shannon formally requested it was taken down, but even taking those measures, those things will surface. So I think it definitely helps in a big way. And I think as we're defining our policies, I was remembering, the why behind it with our students, because I think, yes, our students need to leave and talk about being prepared for what's coming next is true. They need to see the cell phone as a resource for communication, information, and not necessarily an element of compliance. And that's what you have to do, just because, right? So that we're able to answer the why to our students and our families of why we have these policies. That was important. And I think Renaus did. It gives us the ability to enforce it, but the flexibility to use it as a resource and still communicate. And so I think my 2 cents, I think as it is, I think it does for us what I think we need us as administrators to enforce it.
And I think for me, I echo both of their comments. The other add a layer to it, excuse me, is when you're talking about lockdowns, fire drills, stuff like that, having cell phones sometimes it can become a little bit of a challenge. and just, again, educating our teachers, educating our students, educating our families, that if we have a lockdown and God forbid, we're in an actual lockdown, that we're not having, 500-600 parents coming to our sites, and that kind of stuff. So I think it kind of feeds into a couple of different areas, but I think the way that it's written does allow for us to have some flexibility and not so stringent, because just like Dago said, for us at the middle schools, and I'm just talking for Calabasas, I'm sorry, but for our lunch times, our kids don't take their backpacks out to the fields and to lunch. So that was done intentionally because of these issues and other issues as well, to try to minimize those. So we started with that last year, or the year before, I can't remember, but that has helped a lot with that time being the time when things can happen with cell phones. But I think that time in between classes, they don't really have a lot of time in between classes. They're kind of moved, they don't really have a lot of time to really take out their phones anyway. So I think the way I definitely appreciate and really think that that's appropriate for us, at least in the Calabasas.
I just want to think, we do the same thing at Cuatimundi, and I think the other side of it is, I really appreciate just seeing students being kids, going out there, running around, playing basketball, playing frisbee, playing football. Because if the phones are available, then we know that's always gonna be a distractor. And I think it really enriches the experience. So I know that move that both Calabasas and Cuatimundi made last year, I see the fruits of that. I think it really works out, because I love seeing the kids just being kids and socializing, talking to one another, where they have the phone accessible, then it just becomes together alone kind of notion, right? We're all together, but everybody's doing their own thing. So I think it's a great practice, and I really love having that, and because Cuatimundi, we have the same thing, and I just enjoy seeing the kids being kids.
There's a lot of research done on that as far as that, and that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation, is that lunchtime cell phone use, when you don't allow it, or you force students to now talk to each other, reduces a lot of the cyberbullying, but also it increases climate and on your campus as far as kids communicating with each other.
What is the repercussions in a classroom? Like, we have first time teacher discretion, give it back at the end of the class. Second time it goes to the office. Parents come in to discuss it. Third time, I think it's a week, then a month, then the whole year. Do you guys have separate policies on that? Like, what's the repercussion if you ask a student, hey, put away the phone, or it's not in your backpack, get it here? Or do we need to make a policy?
Have it on the matrix and
Yeah, and I think it falls under, I mean, it could fall under a couple of different areas, but, Shannon, if you, oh. Angie, sorry. If you just go to the PowerPoint, the first slide, where it says discipline matrix.
I think the one on the
And it's,
right, Shannon.
it's 12, it's the other one, that's the wrong, that one's something principals use as a. No,
More of an internal document.
yeah,
This one?
yes,
Wait a minute, are we moving away from this?
No.
no, we're just trying to
To-
open it so we can see where it says.
so what?
Look at the, what Mr. Beach was mentioning, right? What the repercussions are, what the
Yeah.
rules are.
Yeah, that's the one. But as we're finding that plays out, just speak briefly in terms of, we treat it at Cuatimundi, it's a defines element, it's not a standalone.
Number 7,
So we look at our discipline, our behavior management process is part of that process. So there's that teacher discretion in the beginning. But it's treated as a step, right? That's an opportunity for the teacher to intervene, conversation. Eventually, if there's a second occurrence, about parents, it's necessary, discuss as how it's obviously not just compliance element, but it's probably interfering with the student's ability to engage effectively in the class. So it's a progressive process. So it's similar to what you're mentioning.
Yeah, we don't we don't take cell phones unless it's an absolute emergency and something, could come. Good result of it, if it's just a kid taking out a cell phone, texting, taking pictures with their friends, it's usually just, they put it away, put it in your backpack or whatever. But at least I've instructed the teachers, we're not taking we can't take cell phones, cause something could happen where it takes a cell phone and then the teacher's responsible for it and, it wasn't turned in right away and I don't wanna, we don't wanna put the teachers in that situation, so. We've instructed to our teachers that they're not taking cell phones. And that's how we approach it.
But I can't really see that part, but
It's just like Dago said,
if the teachers are following the matrix,
clients,
they have the right to take a cell phone, John. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like if we have the policy that allows them to take the cell phone, they do have that right. Unless the policy changes.
We don't have that, we currently don't have it in our policy.
Okay, so that's what I was gonna.
Yeah, that's what I should show you what we have in our current practices, because I know that that's been a conversation for the board of adding that ability to have the ability to remove that from students.
Can add way that when this is practice that Ms. Cabrera implemented before I arrived, and I think it works well for those students that it has become a problem. They are asked, so not the teacher, so I mean, and I don't know if Ms. Cabrera was here, but taking the responsibility or not putting it on the teacher, the student goes to the front office. It is kept at the front office. There's one person who documents it. And there's a process, right? First time, student can get it at the end of the day. If there's a second time, then the parent has to come. So take the responsibility away from the teacher having to worry about, on top of everything else that teachers have to worry about. It's in the front office, it's in a secure place. And at that point, we have a tracking form where it does progress. So when it's that one occurrence, yeah, put it away, teacher discretion. But if it's become an issue, then that's what we're currently doing. When the student has to go to the front, we turn it into the front office and it's kept there until the end of the day. So we can pick it up second time, then it's parent, and then then the time frame doesn't even. So, but it's still, Mr. Verdugo mentioned, I think in terms of, for us to be able to do our job and have a leg to stand on, currently, I don't feel that our teachers can, and I can ask our teachers to confiscate the phone because I think we're putting them in a tough place currently with the absence of that policy.
In the high school, we're not confiscating phones. And I don't really want to be in the phone confiscation business. I remember my first teaching job in 1999 in Flagstaff, took a Game Boy cartridge and put it in my desk. So I'm not taking your device, just the cartridge, and it disappeared, and I had to spend $50, which was like a monumental amount at that time. And now these things are like, 100-fold more expensive than that. So I guess I would say that that's intentionally why I don't want to get in the cell phone confiscation business. Like if the cell phone doesn't work or there's a cracked screen or hey, what happened? Mr. Knoip, my cell phone doesn't work, or the screen's broken. I'm hesitant to confiscate phones because of that reason. I want teachers to have to, or an admin, or anyone that is holding on or collecting cell phones to be in that position.
And I think that's the question though, is if it's a policy that the board wants to implement, then it removes that liability from you if you confiscate it. If that's the policy, parents would sign off on that. So I think that's the current way it works in the USD, is that the parents sign off saying they understand.
And they're told ahead of time what's going on. I'd like to say something with regard to all this before I forget. As you guys know, high school is very strict over there. The NUSD visits very strict. Mr. Lou, we've had these conversations before. And it was weird. The first time I showed up over there after working here, okay, and I went down there with a mindset that I had here. I'm sorry to say it, but I know that nobody wants to hear about this, but when I was here, nobody ever really enforced the cell phone policy. And I had Gail Ritt, I always turn those names around. Rich Gale, who was a math teacher, he was just at his wit's end. He felt that if he confiscated a phone, and he sent it to the admin that they were gonna give him a slap on the wrist, give him the phone back, and he was fed up with the whole situation. So what he started doing was confiscating them himself in his classroom to try to put a stop to all the nonsense in the room and all the disruption. So, he started doing this, and then eventually working out to Shelley, I believe that he was doing this. She cracked down on him and said, you can't be taking people's personal property, and that was the end for him. He couldn't take it anymore. And those are the kinds of things that we were doing. We would have our own way of dealing with it as teachers. I'm telling you, the all truth here about the whole situation. So I had this mindset, and I go down to NUSD, and it was just a couple of years ago when I said, I figured, okay, these guys, they hardly ever take the phones out, so I don't really have to do too much. But one day a girl took a phone out in my room, and I was kind to her and said, listen, if you force me to and I take it, then we're going to the admin one. And I had never really, it was like my second year. I had never really pushed it all the way. So one day she infuriated me, took the phone out again. I was like, that's it, give me the phone. I took it to the office, and she came after class, after school, and she was crying about it, and, trying to make me get soft. And I started to get soft about it. I was thinking to myself, God, I feel bad because she's got to call her parents. She's got a lot of stuff to do. So we went up to the principal, and we talked to him, and he was really kind, and he was smiling at her and listening to her intently. And then in the end, I was shocked because I thought he was going to understand, give it the phone. He goes, well, we have a policy here, and we always live up to our rules here. We follow the rules to a T. And I'm sorry, but you're not getting the phone back, because if I give it back to you, then I have to look at what everybody's going to say, all the people that I took the phone away from before. So he's strict. In other words, bottom line, he was extremely strict about it. He took it away. I was like shell shocked. But then I started to realize why it is that these kids are so scared about taking a phone out, because they know that the rules are enforced. And it's tough work. It's really hard work. But you guys, I would love for all you guys to come and see how the kids are with regard to the cell phones. Really, I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart. I wish that you could come and you could see how peaceful it is. We don't have to fight that battle. Now, did it take a lot of hard work? Yes. Do we have a lot of parents coming in and complaining and leaning on them and saying, why are you picking a my mijito and you took my phone away? Oh, of course we did. And that's a lot of hard work on the administrators. But it works. They follow the rules, and that's what I want to say. They enforce them to a T. Okay? And that's why the kids are afraid to take the phones out. They won't do it. My principal, he'll take them away every single time, and you won't give them back. No matter how much crying, no matter what parent comes in, I don't care how influential they are, he won't give the phone back. That's why things work where we are. Now, if you ask me as a teacher, like I was thinking about what Dago said and what you had said, Mr. Lugo, do I enjoy having the phone when the internet goes off? Of course I do. Sometimes I'm playing Kahoot and the internet has gone off. So I have to ask my kids to take it out. And I tell you, that's risky business, because it's very hard to be watching 35 kids in your classroom with a phone. They can pull all kinds of stuff really quick. And it only takes you seconds to take pictures of everybody, And we know that they posted that kind of stuff on the internet. It's not just here, it's at NUSD, they posted pictures, and principals hate that. So it's risky business when you ask them to take it out. But if you ask me, hey, do you like taking your phone out to run stuff when the net goes down? Yes, so of course I do. I can carry on my lesson. And I tell you, this whole cell phone thing, I totally disagree. We have to be strict about it. We have to have strict rules. Our rule is, if you catch a kid with a phone and you turn the phone in, they don't get it back for a week. And then the second time, they don't get it back for 2 months. The third time, they don't get it back for the rest of the school year. And they are strict about it. They don't mess around. Those are the rules. No warning, no nonsense, because they were told ahead of time and they signed off on it, as you said. And the public buys into it. The public really, you would be surprised. The public really buys into it. They don't like it. They don't want their kids taking out their phones in their room. I mean, is there any adult here that would want their kid taking out a phone in their room when they're not supposed to? There's not one adult in this room that would want that of their kid. So we either have to be strict about it, or we do the hydrogen bomb thing that I think may actually work, which is we just ban them, period. And then we don't have to be worrying about all of this nonsense. We just say, no more cell phones. And I was listening to what you were saying. My daughter Marisol went to school here. And John, not gonna lie, it was pretty cool to be able to communicate with her. And that's back in the day when the phones first came out. Okay. And so, yeah, it was nice. But stop and think about it. Those of us who lived in a generation where there were no phones, didn't have bras. And looking at Steve, you didn't turn out to be such a bad guy. You know? And were you guys able to communicate with your parents and so they'd pick you up and take care of everything? Of course we did. But usually there was one issue, which was we were constantly bugging the secretary to use the cell phone, and the phone, and they would have to plead with them to use the phone to call home. Okay, so that was kind of a pain. That was a real pill to have to be going to bug the secretary. But then we also had payphones back in the day, so we could use payphones to call our parents. Well, we're not gonna have payphones now. So what's the solution for that? We could have a line dedicated to having students call their parents from there. I'm telling you, we could be that radical about it, or we wouldn't have to be worrying about all this nonsense. And I'll tell you one thing, there are probably a lot of people that disagree with me, but I'll tell you, if you tried it out, one thing that you would really like is that you wouldn't have to be worrying about confiscating phones. You wouldn't have to be worrying about having a lockdown and kids taking pictures, communicating, or revving up a bunch of rumor about what's really happening at the high school, to the point where, and I saw this on Facebook, people thought we had shooters on the roof even. Really, we actually had parents who were talking about they have shooters on the roof because some kid, you know how telephone works, says one thing to another and another. Before you know it, we got parents, as I mentioned in the letter to the Nogales International, we got them racing down the highway because they think they have an active shooter on campus. And that's dangerous. That too is really dangerous. It may sound really radical, but I know in my heart that if we just said no more phones, the kids would manage. Like we did, just like in our generation, we managed. They would too. And we would end all of that nonsense, and we would end all the pictures being sent out and posted, whatever, you know. A teacher's tired and puts their head down and just closes their eyes for 1 second, and that kid managed to get that picture and put it out there. Look at these teachers at Rio Rico High School. They're asleep while they're supposed to be working, you know? Stuff like that, nonsense like that, all kinds of things that we can't even dream of right now that they do. I don't think it's so terrible, really, to just say, no more phones. And then you don't have to worry about confiscating, going through all of that nonsense with the parents. I tell you, we would end a lot of stuff. It sounds really radical. But hey, if those of us who are sitting here, the governing board, got through school without a cell phone, right? Several of you here, it can be done again. There'll be some things that'll happen that we didn't anticipate, but they'll get through. It really would. It sounds radical, but they'd be fine. I mean, we made it through. We can have a phone. So that's really radical. But then if we're not going to do that, and we're going to allow the kids to have the phone, then Mr. Canoy, we're going to go into the issue of confiscating them. And if they're going to bring them onto campus, I do believe that we should confiscate them. No Mickey Mousing around. We tell them, if you're caught the first time, we're taking away for a week. Really, that's not that harsh. And then the next time, 2 months, they get the hint. They know these people are serious. They don't mess around in the year. And really, if you ask my principal, you go through hell with that kind of issue? Of course he did. It's not as hard. He told me it's not as hard now because it's been established. So it's not as hard as it was initially, but it still will always be a challenge. That's it, my piece.
So I got a question. You're proposing teacher discretion within the classroom, but maybe making a policy that bans them during passing period at lunch and.
Yes, I like that idea. When you were saying that we shouldn't have it during lunch, I thought that should be added to this. We shouldn't allow them, and I think it's right. I think the data speaks the truth. I agree with that. I don't think that we should allow them to have it, period. They don't need to have the cell phone until the end of the day when they call their folks. If you really want to go that route, you want to allow them to have the phone. I mean, why in God's green earth are they bringing it to school to begin with? Okay, yeah, like you said, like I mentioned earlier, sure, it's nice when I tell them, okay, everybody, the net went down, take your phone out, we can continue the Kahoot game. But really, that's not so critical, you know? They don't need it until the end of the school day when they contact their folks, okay, fine. You know, that would end us not having to provide a line, but really, Mr. Lugo, I think you and your team should contemplate that. What if we had a line where we could just have the students call their folks from there? What do they need the phones for? Want to do research? They have a computer. That's what we do in class whenever, that's the other side of it that maybe you should think about. Is that it's not killing the net entirely. The kids have computers in their classrooms. They have the cards and they take them out and they can access the internet. So if they want to access information for the sake of academics, they can do it. And of course, the computers have all kinds of stuff on there to prevent them from accessing all kinds of ridiculous pages that they would try to do, right? Like social media. So that puts a stop to that nonsense. So they're not being denied information, technological information for the sake of academics. But yes, Mr. Beach, I think that that's a great idea. And it's up to the discretion of the teachers. And we have teachers at our school that like to use them almost every day exclusively for all kinds of information. I don't know how they do it. I couldn't do it because I would, like I said to you about the risky business. I think it's risky business once they start taking that phone out. Wow, you're asking for it. You can't keep an eye on 35 kids at one time. I don't care how good you are. You can't keep an eye on 35 kids.
Yeah, it wasn't my idea. I was just wondering if that's the direction you were going.
No, that's. Oh,
The policy as far
I'm
as
just throwing some ideas out. I don't have any proposal. I'm just throwing ideas, food for thought. You guys, we as a governing board always have to do stuff with votes and we always have to have 3 people who agree, as we all know. But I'm telling you, I think that's is a really, really serious conversation here. And I thought about it thoroughly as an educator and as a governing board member, because those are 2 different perspectives. And still don't know about my wits end, because I think about what Jonathan said, it's so true, John. I mean, God, man, we have a lockdown and we got people spreading rumors like crazy. And it must drive, if I were in your position, I'd go nuts having to worry about that kind of stuff. God, man, that stuff spreads exponentially and you have no control over it.
I think that'd be hard to stop regardless if you had a policy and no cell phone policy. Because we've had it down at our school, with 34 kids, a quick text, it's on the internet. We went into lockdown, border patrols on campus. So that'd be very, very hard for 1,400 kids at a high school or elementary school. Even with a policy, and this is my personal view. And I know we gotta move on to other topics, and this might be something everybody can chew on, but you know, have you seen any problems at lunch or passing period? Is it minute, the cell phones? You know, cause I know where all this came from. Last year, we're getting videos of teachers being pushed. We're getting videos of firecrackers going off in hot areas. We're getting videos. It was all over the internet. So we gotta start cracking down on the cell phones, cause this is getting ridiculous, you know, the amount of press. But if the culture changes at the school and you're more proactive, we got the security guards, you know, is there a need to go to that extreme? When I'm looking at as a classroom teacher right now, I could get them on defiance. That's a policy we have. And so do I need a policy that states that, you know, it goes to, I confiscated, like you were saying, I got a $1,200 cell phone now that I gotta be watching over the whole class period before I turn it into the office. So I know down at NUSD, yes, they have those policies, and there's no cell phone issues at our school either. We're real strict with it. But you know, the need came around, that's the direction they went, you know, and I'm always interested. Do you feel that there's a need for that extreme, or can we just do the disrespect of authority and take it like Doggo said, this step, which still brings the parents in and forces the kid to put it away rather than create.
Just if I could add something, I think sometimes when we have those conversations with the parents get upset with the students that they're getting a phone call about their cell phone, because maybe they've had that conversation with them before. maybe they told them, we'll let you take it if blank, 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 you know, if you don't take it out in class and da, 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 da. But if I get, and usually the parents will take it. If we have to take it, the parents will take it. And they tell them, you've lost your phone for 2 months. You lost your phone for a week. They get upset that we have to physically come and get the phone. It's an inconvenience for them. Because they're having to do something or something so in their mind, so dumb and petty, right? And so, when we do go down that route, when we do have to take it because of whatever we do call the parents, it's, we see it as, the parents see it as an inconvenience to them, and they're not upset with us. They're more upset with their son or daughter that has had that infraction. And causing them to leave work early or whatever the case may be. And we, you know, we have it locked up in a file cabinet with a key, you know, keys locked up, whatever, safe area, and that's what we do. So I don't, since we went to the backpack thing last year, I think that helped a lot. Helped a huge amount with the issues that we were having outside in the playground area. So I don't know how you would do that at the high school. That's a big undertaking for them. But at least at our sites, it's really helped, and it's not, we don't have very many issues.
And then I'd like to say something. I know you guys are gonna say, wow, you really pounded away at that issue, but I'm telling you, when I start to think about this, you think about cyberbullying, you say no more cell phones, good night to that issue. Drug deals on campus because people were taking good night. End story. All of this stuff and the amount of time that administrators spend with this issue. Good night. You take it away, good night. They don't have to deal with it anymore. And it sounds really radical, but I'm telling you, they would get by, just like we got by. We all got by here, and we went to school, and we made it through, and people picked us up on time. They would have to do the same things that we used to have to do. They would have to communicate. And Mr. Lopez, you talk about kids. You said, I like kids being just kids and not having a cell phone, going out, playing soccer, playing basketball, whatever. They have to socialize. They have to talk to each other. They can't be, hey, you know, blah, 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 and sending texts to each other, you know, about whatever what's going on. This is how they communicate with each other. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they would have to socialize more with each other, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm telling you, I really firmly believe that if we did something like that, a lot of people would start to look at what we're doing in this district and they would say, whoa, look, it works. It actually works. These kids are not allowed to bring a phone to school, and they're still managing to get through, and they're still doing everything like they did before. That's it. That's all.
I can add something real quick. I think Mr. Beach, your questions were aimed at Mr. Phillips, so I'll make sure that he can answer the questions. But I think going back to what I mentioned earlier, the why, I think ideally, how can we, I think age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, how could have policies that address, to me, what's at the core of this is a cell phone policy, which how do we educate and empower and prepare our students to manage cell phones on their own? I think to me, that's what should be at the core, right? Because all of us had to learn somehow. And I think that's part of, if we say, no, if the policy of the board, I'll gladly enforce and do my best to enforce the policy of the board. Granted. Or I think is creating a bubble, the solution, right? I'm aware and wary when we create bubbles that do not exist outside of schools, right? Because I think we do a disservice to our students. Now, at the middle school, I think that's big kid being kids, and I love it. I think that's appropriate. At the high school, I don't want to speak for the high school, but my high school background is how do we achieve that? Some of the things that schools have done is you put policies where students come in and they store it. There are places they store, and there's a policy, and they put them in there. Without going to the expense, Mr. Murdu, what he mentioned, but there's a location in every classroom. They come and they store them safely. It's under lock. They don't have access to it. And eventually students start to realize, hey, I can be without my phone for an hour and I survive, right? Because what we didn't have,
I find that comical because I mean, we all didn't have a phone and we survived.
That's where I was going, Mr. Ramirez. All of us, we grew up in a different time.
Right.
When I'm a little old school in that sense too. My son, who's a 7th grader, does not have a cell phone yet. There's been a conversation when it's the right time, and I know every family makes that choice based on various reasons. But the reality is that when students are getting, or young kids are getting their phone when they're 8, when they're 9, their brain is wired differently from the way our brain is wired. Right? They're stimulated, it's just reality. We can't comprehend how innately connected they are to their phone, and that's also in the research too. So we cannot just say, we're gonna create a bubble that they don't longer exist. So they're not growing up in the 1990s, the 1980s like we did, but we didn't have access to those things. They're growing up in a different time. They're dealing with AI and things that we didn't. I remember in high school, I graduated in 1999. I remember our senior year was the first year that it was, the word on the street was that there's internet in our school. And I remember being in the library, sitting down, trying to access internet, and I don't know if I ever did, whatever that was. That's where I grew up in. That was not an issue. So I think we have to be responsive to the realities over time and do a policy, whatever the policy is, I'll do my best to enforce it, and know all of us will. But let's make sure that we're keeping at the core. How do we do a service to our students and prepare them for the world that they're growing up in, not the world that we grew up in? I think that's important to keep in mind. But Mr. Good, I'm sorry, I know the question.
But I think Mr. Lopez is saying, well, these, we don't understand their mindset, we don't understand how they operate and so forth. This is the assumption that they must have a cell phone. Well, no, I'm not saying, I told you, they leave school and they go home, they can access their phone, they can get right back on their phone and do all of their stuff, but I'll tell you, it's gonna cut out all of these porquerias that have to do with taking pictures with, you know, posting them online, embarrassing our schools and teachers and other staff. It's just ridiculous, I think. Again, I know some people here probably think it's radical, but I don't. I think that doing away with it, it just ends all of this nonsense and all of these little things that we have to think about confiscation and all of this nonsense. Cyberbullying. We just end it all in one fell swoop by saying, no phone, period. You wanna be able to access your parents? We got a line right here. You can call your parents if you have to let them know that, you know, you forgot your equipment or you forgot whatever it is, your shorts or cross country or whatever. You may have forgotten something, or you needed to relay a message to them. But this baby, God, you know, constantly at school is for the birds.
But I don't know, is it constantly at school? That's my.
I was gonna add that the majority of the issues that I have, and it's, again, speaking just for me, that I have with cyberbullying and that kind of stuff happens outside of school, where it gets brought to the attention of the administration from the parents or from the kids. Hey, you know, I was texting me these messages on whatever, and I'm looking at it was Dominic actually. But when we're looking at timestamps on everything, it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. It's when they're home is when we're having a lot of the issues that we're dealing with them. We're helping the families, we're helping them because they're our kids, right?
That's supported, by the way, by those online courses that the teachers have to take.
Right, and so I think a lot of and I guess my point is the majority of the issues that we're having with cyberbullying, messaging and going back and forth is happening outside of school and to that was point, like, we've talked about having parent meetings and kind of trying to educate our families as well. And I know that we've had at Calabasas, we've had people come from the outside to try to pull people in and try to educate the parents on these are the things to look at, cyberbullying and blah, 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 blah. But I think a lot of it, and I won't say 100%, but a significant percentage of the things that we deal with are things that happen outside that get brought into the school.
Regarding cyberbullying specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's back there by those online courses that we have to take. As teachers, we take those online courses, and that's what they said. It's one of the questions that they ask you that you have to answer. Which is, where does most of cyberbullying occur? Inside or outside the school? And it's outside the school.
Unfortunately. Go ahead, John, sorry.
I've been taking notes.
Help you.
Doggos. Here's my experience. There are some cell phone problems in school, and those are the cell phone problems that exist generally in teachers' classrooms who are new, developing, learning how to teach and learning how to keep kids and hold kids accountable. It's not just cell phone problems in those classrooms. There are other problems too, which we address, like, we have evaluations, we have drop-ins, we have TLA on site. Like there are more resources to help develop teachers in Santa Cruz Valley than any other place I've been. But in my experience, the classrooms that have cell phone problems are those classrooms where the teacher doesn't hold kids accountable. And that's it, like, you've got to hold every kid accountable every time. If a teacher lets John have their cell phone out and doesn't let Heather, everyone in the room around them sees this inconsistent pattern, and that's where I notice the problems are. It's not just cell phones in those classrooms. I also wrote down that there are, while even if there's a cyber whatever, cyber bullying, cyber threat, most of those do happen off campus. But there is a nexus that affects, there's generally a nexus to school, it affects what's happening at school. But if the thought is banning cell phones on campus, if the thought is banning cell phones on campus is gonna stop cyberbullying, then that's flat out not gonna happen. It's just gonna happen off campus. We're still gonna have issues. And I'm not saying nothing ever happens on campus, but I bet we have less than 5, if we have 2 legit cases of cyberbullying that's taking place during the school year. Then is the proposal no cell phones? Are we talking about having no cell phones at school, period? Or cell phones have to be locked up? Or a discussion? Okay, all right. Well, we have 1,400 kids on campus, and if I don't know, there's a large percentage of those kids that have cell phones, and parents buy cell phones for kids so they can communicate with their kids. And if there's a cell phone ban on campus, then I think that, yeah, it's gonna, I'll enforce whatever I'm instructed to enforce, but it's also gonna create a huge influx of concerned parents for the school board.
But that's always the case, Mr. Canoy, always the case. Just like down there, the principal had to suffer for the first, whatever it was, couple months. Because you're gonna always have the public who's gonna put heat on you, always.
But they have their cell phones down there.
It's not a ban, right? It's not a cell phone ban
No.
on campus.
No. That would only be in the short term. That's not gonna be, that would be a short term thing until they understood that this is the way we operate, period. Just throwing that out there. Kramer?
Well, thank you, Mr. Verdugo.
The discussion.
You can always jump in, everybody's jumping in, nobody was.
Yeah, it's a study session.
No, I was just following the protocol. You were calling people. No, I mean, I've been listening for 40 minutes and certainly there's a lot of, Nogales didn't get to where they're at just like this.
Right.
That was in the making from when you went to high school prior to that. So the buy-in was already there. This wasn't an overnight thing. It's always been there. So you can't really compare it because if we don't have it, they've had it. It's hard to enforce. Just saying that. So at Pearson and I know Nogales and the middle schools. So the parents already know. In fact, some of the parents already have kids there that were students during that time. So they know this is the policy, this is the way it's gonna be. Having that said, it's certainly, and I've certainly listened to, I don't think that our policy, what you were hitting on, John, right now, during class time without the express permission of the teacher. Well, you've got teachers that are going, we'll just use you to an example. Your classroom is, you know what, I don't care. Go ahead and use the phone because I've got it under policy. Where you're saying, it's my policy is you're not having phones. We've got 2 conflicting teachers where a student goes into that classroom and is the good teacher because you get to let us use our phones. You're the bad teacher because you don't. You've got a situation because we've let during class time without the express, we put it on the teacher, the onus of responsibility rather than the principal or board. That may we want to look at because it should be one size fits all. And I know, John, you were kind of touching it. It should be. The whole school should be the same way. Not one teacher having the discretion. Because in the kids' eyes, where the great teacher and everyone else is, we get to do everything. It's a free for all. You're the bad teacher because you are strict. That's where I see a concern, because you've got teachers that are subbing, that are going, what the heck? All these kids are using their phones in here. We may have stepped in before that, before I'm saying this, but it certainly is happening, or had happened. And I know you said about teachers taking phones away. Some teachers, the bad teacher, took the phones away. Well, they got in trouble from principal and parents. So we're putting that in the teacher's responsibility. I think we may need to alleviate that. Also, you said about the Wi-Fi. I have heard that. We brought that up last year, and I know it's still going on. So teachers are now forced to having kids use their phones because the Wi-Fi streaming is going for 15, 20 minutes. I may be exaggerating, I may be short of it.
No, that's not an exaggeration.
So then it is happening.
No.
Now we're putting the responsibility back on the teachers of saying, hey, we gotta get this assignment done, so the kids are starting to use their phones. So now we've got phone use, right? So what are we doing about that? So it goes back to the fixing that Wi-Fi, so we don't have that phone use if need be. I'm just trying to get this real quick, because I'm not gonna spend a lot of time. Taking phones away from, as they did in Nogales, I'm saying that. Brad, you touched on it, the deterrence. What is the deterrence? If a teacher says, like you said, the authority is, put your phone away so they don't have to take this from them, document it, it's in the system. After the second or third time, whatever we create, well, now it is, hey, parents, your kid's not getting the phone because of this. But you take the onus of being the bad person, or whatever we want to say on that is, we have it in the policy, it's board policy. So these are some of the notes, and I'm glad I kind of waited because I did hear this feedback. Like I said, it's we could simplify it by us creating as a policy to give it back to you as principals, so you as principals can give that to the teachers. We'll be the bad people then if that's the case. But if it needs to get some strength, then we probably need to tweak our policy, especially that one, like I said, during class time, express permission of the teacher. We need to get rid of that. Because the teacher shouldn't have that authority. We should put the authority back into us, give it to you guys. Thank you. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Schaller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to weigh a little bit on the internet, Mr. St. Cor is working, as we know, to upgrade and expand the capabilities of the internet. We've been prepared to come to the board whenever asked to give that update. I know he will show back-end graphics that he looks at to show that the capacity of the internet is more than sufficient to handle the 1,400 students and the actually 3,500 students around the district and teachers. He's very frustrated by the buffering and so on that people have all experienced, including myself and the superintendent. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but we've done upgrades to this point, and we can show that capability is there. To your point, Mr. Kramer, about putting the onus on teachers for express use. That language says for academic purpose only, so then it becomes a backup that I think it potentially, no matter how robust our internet is, you never know when there might be a breakdown. So in my opinion, adding the word for academic purposes might alleviate some of that concern, but that's just a suggestion. But I'm letting the board know that the IT department stands ready to present when you need us to on the status of the backbone, so to speak.
Forgive Mr. Shepherd, how specifically we have to be on wording, because to me it's common sense, academic only in my classroom, but
That teacher would use that academic.
yeah, but I always look at the data, whether there's a need for extreme policies. And, being the good teacher, whatever, if you have a teacher and the policy states that cell phones should be put away, plain and simple, they're put away. I understand as a teacher was always academic, we might need to add that. There's a study at Harvard that states if a cell phone is just out, even as we have them, we're talking about cell phone usage, everybody has it out right now. That a kid, their focus on academic content drops significantly because they're wondering, is somebody texting? Man, I check my Facebook, my Instagram, my social media. So that's why it's so important to enforce that you know, academic purposes, it's gotta be put away, but a lot of food for thought, and I know Mr. Kramer hit on it. We've been spending about 40 minutes on this and I'll make some proposals. and
It's a
move
very
forward.
important
It
issue.
is, and this was one of the major ones that
It's one of them,
was coming up last.
dress code.
I have something else to say. I think that Mr. Canoy also kind of put, you know, like, a big issue would also be the teacher that has not very good management skills, okay? Because that strong teacher or the bad teacher, okay? Now, I have my daughter, she works at the high school, okay? She has zero problems in her classroom because she sets the rules from the beginning of and those are her classroom rules. So she's the bad one, okay? Because she tells the kids, and that is one of her classroom policies where she says, and that was one of mine too, okay, when I was a teacher, the cell phone must stay in their backpacks, okay? And she tells them, if I get it, you know, if you take it out, okay, I will take it from you. You're gonna put it on my desk or whatever, without her even touching it or whatever. They put it on her desk and they will not be able to get it until the end of the day, until the end of the school day or the end of the period or whatever. So those are like her rules, okay? And I think that if all of the teachers had something like that and they'd say, well, it's there, it's available, but it's in your backpack, it's out of sight, out of their person, I think that the kids would be more, you know, I don't think we have to go to that drastic, you know, measure like he's saying, because I think it would be something that would be really bad for our district if we say absolutely no cell phones in the classroom, or absolutely no cell phones on your kids, or what. I just think it's a little bit drastic because of the fact that, you know, that we are not, okay, we did not grow up that way. And now, I mean, you know, your baby, okay, 2-3 months or whatever, 6 months, and as soon as they can grab it, you've seen, you know, where the little kids are like, run, with nothing, you know, nothing will, you know, will shut them up except the phone. Why? Because that's what they're used to. I mean, really, you know, okay, you see that. So I think it would not be a good idea, and that's just my opinion, okay, to take it to that drastic measure, okay? But, you know, because the kids are gonna find a way to bring it or whatever, and I think you're gonna end up with more issues than you really need. I think that these teachers that need to be educated, or they need to, you know, they're the same ones that still need classroom management, okay? It's a mess because they still don't know, they're new teachers or they're whatever, but if you have that and you educate those teachers and everybody has the same, you know, thing about keep your you know, your phones in your backpack, they're not in your person or anything. I think you're gonna alleviate a lot of issues, you know, with the phone without having to be that drastic. And that's just, you know, my opinion. But again, you know, you know, and I know that the wording has a lot to do, and I'm sorry I brought it up because I did bring it up, but only because I've seen the kids and I didn't know how far it was, you know, it was going to be enforced, you know, like if the kids are gonna be allowed to use it, you know, during passing periods, because, you know, I mean, they go out of the classroom, even my daughter's classroom, okay, as soon as they get their backpack and they're out of her door, the phone comes out and you're taking pictures. I mean, that's just the way it is, okay? She doesn't do anything about that anymore. Why? Because it's, you know, it's already out of her classroom. It's already, you know, but does she enforce it? Oh, yeah, very much. And she is the bad one. Okay, so
I'll paraphrase that.
she's one of the good ones, okay?
I used the wrong adjective. The mean and nice.
The mean and the nice, I'm sorry.
That's how, yeah, no, I said the good and bad, which.
Okay,
mean
no,
and
but
bad.
it's, you know,
Whatever
but
the words that students would clarify as it.
but, okay, but you know,
On the slide with the cell phone policy. It's part of the presentation. It's actually part of the presentation.
The next slide.
Slides, 30 slides later.
oh yeah, it's, yeah, cell phone,
And so that the board can see it, that it is, we did add it, for today as an action item if you want to update the policy. So it would be the next agenda item after the studies. Did allow, the idea that if you did want to update it, then you would have the ability to do it. But it's going to be now so that we get to that portion of the board meeting.
Always approve it and then working document.
Yes,
You don't come back and change it,
Yes, exactly.
right? As long as we get it in, then we can come back and change it with that word.
But that, this is where it says right there, because you see it says during class time, a cell phone or other electronic communication device shall be turned off and placed in the student's purse or the backpack. I think that's what you really want.
Right.
Again, unless the teacher says, okay, go ahead and take it out. The thing is that for the kids not to have them on their person, like in their back pocket or wherever they hide it or wherever they put it in while they are in class, because why? It's always there, like he says, it's just like having it out here, okay, you're gonna be like, oh my God, or somebody gonna text me, somebody going to, or what do I do now? But if it's not on their person and it's in their purse or in their backpack, I think you're going to alleviate a lot of issues, okay, in the classroom. Okay,
Do all students carry backpacks?
Oh, yeah, or purses, I think that 99% of the kids do, I think so.
I'd like to ask everybody something. If we're telling them to put the phone in the backpack, right? And not have it on during class, right?
Mhm.
And then we don't have them using them during the passing period, right? And we don't have them using them during lunch, right? Then why in God's green earth do they have to have a phone? And we say, it's so bad, it's so radical that the public is going to get upset with us. For what reason? What is so bad about them? You just saying, no more phones. Here's a line that you can use. We'll have a line that we could get. Here's a line, if you want to talk to your parents, you can use this phone right here and you can talk to them. What's so terrible about that? When are they going to be using the phone then? After school? Well, why even bring it then? We can avoid all of that.
Why not during lunch?
Why during lunch?
I don't think there was a problem 10 years ago when we had it during lunch. I don't know what Nogales High School does.
They don't allow it to be.
I know that 20 years ago we didn't, but I deviated from that when I went to the other school. And I said during lunchtime, I don't see a problem with it.
Again, we could avoid all the nonsense.
And I think at Rio Rico High School, it's always been that
Same.
way.
The phones.
I'll play the devil's advocate if, I'm always for, leadership by example. So if we're gonna not allow phones on campus for students, teachers gotta put them away.
Wait a minute, that's different. They're adults and they're.
No, because back in 1980, when my parents taught, they didn't have cell phones back there either, and they used the office phone. So I think going to that extreme, it's a no-go. But, as far as this is
Separate issue,
concerned,
Mr. Beach.
yeah, we can bring it up at a different time. But the policy, I think we should add, cell phone use in class will only be allowed for academic purposes.
I like that, I could live with that, but then this is going to be, again, all of this is going to fall on you guys, because you're going to have to take the phones away. And you were just telling me that you don't really like going on that course, Mr. Good. We're gonna allow them to bring the phone in their backpack. And they're not using, then we're gonna have the issues with administrators having to enforce these rules. And then you're gonna have to be tough and strict about it.
We could bring that up for a vote.
What the policy is and then how it's enforced would be technically two different things, so. If the policy is approved with that language change or whatnot, doesn't necessarily mandate that they have to confiscate the phones. They have to enforce the
I'm
policy.
good with it. I'm absolutely fine with that. I think it's a great idea. But once again, once we introduce this phone, okay, once we allow them to bring them in, then we're opening up this can of worms where we're gonna have to be enforcing all of these rules to a T, or otherwise it doesn't work. It's just on paper and it doesn't work. And we've had serious issues with this thing. I worked here 20 years at the high school. I'm telling you, nobody ever enforced the rules with regard to cell phones. They were not enforced. And as a consequence, we had all kinds of headaches. And you heard the story I told about Rich Gale.
Mr. Ramirez, you're stating that the cell phone policy is not enforced by school administration. I disagree with. We've had a very small number of cell phone referrals and those referrals are addressed.
It was an attack on you, Mr. Knuckles. I'm just saying, in the time that I was there, and the 20 years that I was there, we didn't have people enforcing the rules. And as a consequence, teachers took it into their own classroom, into their own hands for how they were going to enforce it, sort of like what you were saying. They all did individually, but this brings me back to Mr. Kramer's point, which is Then all of a sudden we had the good cop and the bad cop. We get into that issue again too. And I agree with him. I think we should take this out of the teacher's hands. Because otherwise, all of the responsibility is gonna fall on them. We have to be tough and say, we just have this policy, period. And it's a board policy, not a teacher one, or we're gonna get into. Which, oh, wow, this teacher's cool because this person lets me take my phone out. This one isn't because this person's strict. I agree with that.
It's, and Mr. Beach, I agree in a sense, but when you say academic purposes, I concur. Yes, that's what they should be doing, correct? But then again, you get the interpretation of that teacher that says it's academic purposes. So all kids are using their phones for academic purposes, researching on why or what this TikTok or whatever social media is going on, but we're using it for that. It's academic purposes. Yes, I'm just saying that, will you leave again for interpretation?
But if you add specific academic,
What specific?
what the teacher directed.
Right, I'm just saying what the teacher just directed.
Well, that's what the teacher's teaching. You know, it's an enforcement issue. It's not a policy issue.
There we go again, right back to enforcement. I agree.
So if the teacher circumvents academics for researching on TikTok or Instagram or whatever you just said.
Whatever,
Social media. I always look at where's the data. When you go in the classroom, are they doing that, or is the teacher doing cahoots, doing some type of quiz? You know, I'd revert back to what does the data show, or what are you guys observing other than speculation?
To answer that question, I would say currently at Cotimundi, it's not a major issue that I feel that we need a policy change for us to be able to better do our job or better address the situation. That's what I would say. And the two quick things that I would add is, to the point of classroom management, that you as a board empowering us and allowing us to do our job as best as we can through these policies, I think is also important for us to enable and empower our staff, our teachers. Just like in Ms. Betos, I mean, I was, the same time Mr. Ramirez was there, I was there too. Cell phone was not an issue in my classroom. It was a resource. I had expectations that were very clear, and it was a resource. I was teaching AP literature and language, and it was at the time when not every student had a device, and those who had it, actually we had a student with a phone, and I put my grouping with other students who didn't have a phone, and that phone was actually communal use. So it actually enhanced the learning process for students. So on that end, I think it's also important to include students in the process, meaning to the point that Mr. Verdugo mentioned, you know, just quick research that I was going through is, you know, also empowering our students to know that what you mentioned, Mr. Beach, is true. Like there's things that we've arrived for us that putting our phone on airplane mode, right? But we get home and making sure that we disconnect as adults. It's also for them too, and that's an opportunity for them to learn that. So when they come in, if their phone's out on the table, that's their engagement is gonna drop. So I think empowering them to say, putting your phone in your backpack is not just because I want you to, or I as the adult know that that's what's best for you, but there's research behind it, and the reason is for your benefit. I think that's where as a district, we're going towards PCB, personalized competency-based learning, student agency, right? Where they're agents of their own learning, where they feel empowered that, oh yeah, that this is for my own benefit, and it's not just a me. So I think the policy as it is allows us to, Cotimundi, it's not a non-issue. It's not a major issue that I feel policy changes need to be implemented for us to be able to.
And the other thing just going to comment real quick is that, cell phones only need to be used when they're almost on. Okay. Because they all have their life. And so that would be something that the other thing that we're getting into this process is that even there for the backpack anyway, unless Wi-Fi is not working and they need to use their cell phone because everybody has work on different now.
That's going to what you're just saying, or what I was kind of saying is, you don't need it. And why can't parents email their kids?
Exactly.
What you were saying about that, well, if they got their, nope, don't they have school emails?
Starting in middle school.
Right. What, still, middle school too. I mean, elementary kids, come on.
I can have a phone.
And I think that's important to the conversation because to your point of email, like with my son's like, open up your email when he was in 5th grade, it's like, Cause I think sixth grade is the first year that they have access to their school email.
Well, parents could certainly email their children saying, I'm gonna pick you up at this time. Oh, mom, just email me, boom. Maybe it's the phone.
Now, the poor kids, you know, for kindergarten and fifth grade, when they really suffer, you know, not having a phone. Yeah, it's really terrible.
Thank you. Just with the cell phones, I mean, we've implemented that cell phone procedure 3 years ago. And it's been very beneficial, and I personally would like, you know, at a school to allow a child to have their phone. You never know what happens in personal lives, so they still have it, but they have to turn it off or keep it on silent, and then that's where the procedure and the consistency of everybody on campus understands that and follows it. So it's no good, bad, nice, mean. But we did get everybody on board, and we never had any issues. And I think the key was just explaining at the beginning of the year exactly what it was. I know when I brought it up with the students and the parents, I gave my reason why. We have the Chromebooks, we have this, and it's not an issue. We did purchase quite a bit of outdoor material, so they had things to do, so it wasn't bored being on their, wanting to be on their phones. But I think just maybe if you reword the policy, but it's just the procedures, maybe be consistent between 6-12. With obviously some differences between the middle school level and the high school level. Our kids do not, and they don't even fight. Like, they have their phone out, they've been told to put it away, and the kid would just come up like, yeah, I got busted, here you go. I'll pick it up at the end of the day. But we kept a tracker because once, okay, you make the mistake, you don't have it. Twice, you know, it's turning into defiance, and that goes right back to the board, the behavior matrix. And no longer is it a cell phone issue. It's a defiance and behavior issue that we need to correct. And that's the whole point with the discipline, is just correcting their behavior. So it's worked, and it does at Calabasas now as well. And there's drastic, like when in the 6 years I was at CTMS, we were getting like, they were making their own accounts, and we had to try to figure it out, you know, pictures from on campuses. And once we did that, and we told the kids, it's not discipline. I'm not saying, you know, it can turn in, but it's not because I don't want you to have it. It's because you don't need it right now. You have all these other resources, but I wouldn't want to take it away completely. Like, they have to keep it at home, just as an administrator, past teacher, and then a parent. There are things that happen, but that is when, if it's after school for sports or whatever, they can use it. But we did instruct the parents, they have to call, or the kids need to call from the front office, and we have to make it readily available to them.
I want to say something with regard to that, because it sounds sweet when you say, well, I'd hate to take a cell phone away because everybody has a personal life. Sounds really good at first, right? Okay, so then if something happens in a family, then you're saying that the person would be able to access, the parent will be able to communicate with the kid. How can that be done if we say that you can't have a phone, it's in the backpack, right? And you can't use it during passing period? How would the kid be able to even get that message? Wait a second. Now I'm gonna bring you back to my time, okay? And you guys won't have to worry too much about it, because we probably won't have these conversations very much once the baby boom generation all dies off. We'll never have a world that ever remembered what it was like to have to live without a cell phone. But let me address that. I too had a personal life when I was in high school, and I didn't have a cell phone. And my mom died when I was a freshman in high school, okay? And still, they were able to communicate that message to me. All right, and I ended up having to go in a car with my brother, and we went up the highway to go say goodbye to my mom. Okay, I had no cell phone, and I had a personal life too. This is really silly. You know, when you really start to think about the policy, you think about the phones being turned off, but being put in the backpacks, and it being asked to be not used the entire day. Really, it's not so radical if you just say, no phones, people. You don't bring them to school. You would be amazed at all the positives that will come about from that. And all the headaches that we on your plate. As the superintendent, your entire team, and every administrator in this room, you would be surprised at how you would have no more of those headaches. It's not really so radical. I said that in the beginning. I said, you may find that radical, and I used the word radical, but then come to think about it, it's not radical. It really isn't. I think that if we got by, if we managed, and we had emergencies, family emergencies, and all kinds of situations. That these kids could all do it too. Now, if somebody throws up in my face, well, Mr. Amis, but then you're denying them academics, and we start saying, this is really gonna take away, hamper them academically. Mr. Verdugo made that great point. They have their Chromebooks. Okay, Mr. Kramer made a good point too, which is if you're really so into tech stuff, you could check your email if somebody wanted to send you a message. But I don't even think that we have to go that far. Really, I don't. I think that they could manage, they would be just fine. And they could still access the internet. And what I like about these babies, about them having a laptop and being able to access the information right here, is that all the nonsense is killed immediately by Mr. St. Cyr and his team, destroying their ability to access all of the nonsense on the internet. They still can use this baby to access all kinds of academic things. I'm telling you, this is probably, I wonder, right now, none of us in this room, we'd have to do research to find out, are there any districts in our country that have tried to do this, and what was their success rate? And when Mr. Beach said to me right now, well, I went to this thing with Harvard, this study by Harvard stating that if you have your phone out on the side, that you're less engaged academically. Thank you, Ms. Fogan. Then I think, yeah, great. You're probably gonna be, I can come back to Mr. Lopez. You're probably gonna be much more engaged socially with people. Okay, even in your generation, Mr. Lopez, I imagine that when you were in middle school, they didn't have the phones out and all that stuff, so you were much more into social, having to talk to people.
They have phone, I don't know about you.
So you guys had to talk to people just like we did, much more than these kids have to. And I'm telling you, there's a really beautiful thing. They would really talk to each other a heck of a lot more at school and communicate with each other. I don't think we look at all the positives that are involved in such a thing. I think there would be a lot more positive, and we would end all of this nonsense. Really, all of these pain and the neck things that you guys see as administrators would be gone, all of them. In a heartbeat. It's something, now, if you said to me, how long would it take for the public to get used to this? My God, it would take a while. They wouldn't like it at first, and they would fight us tooth and nail probably in the beginning, but in the end, it's kind of like what Mr. Kramer had said. We also had to start somewhere too, Mr. Kramer. This started somewhere along the line, and then they developed it into the point where it became understood that this is just the way things are. So you have to have a start somewhere. And I tell you, I think that, yeah, there are gonna be a lot of people in the public that are gonna complain in the beginning. But once it's established, they wouldn't complain anymore. Once it's a thing that's understood, they wouldn't anymore. And we would end all of this nonsense. Really should think about it. At least I pray to God that you would go home and at least think about it on some quiet time. I'm asking you, please, think about it. Maybe we should do some research on it and see whether people were successful about it. Who knows?
Dallas High School be the place to do that research if they have this in policy so strictly enforced already? So are their students socially and emotionally healthier than our students? Because does their administration have?
That's a rough question, see. Yeah, that's not, no, I mean, I'm taking any polls, and you have to have some kind of research. But I would venture to say that they talk to each other a lot more during lunch than, when they're having to grab this baby.
They're suggesting then that if we're looking for a place that's already piloting this program, then that would be the place to.
No, I'm talking about
that conference.
phones, period.
Isn't that what they have?
No, you can have phones on Nogales.
You can have your phone, you turn it on at the end of the school day and you.
Okay, so they have a phone on campus, but cannot access it at any point during the day.
Yeah, but no matter what, you may say, okay, Mr. Armis, well then, nobody takes out their cell phone during. We all know that they're gonna be kids that are defiant all the time. You could have kids that take them out and they're still trying to take pictures and do all kinds of stuff. They still have that. So they still have problems with kids who will try to sneak it out and take a picture, do whatever. It's always gonna be the case. As long as you have these on the campus, you're always gonna have that situation. A fight breaks out, you're always gonna have a kid who's trying to film it and post it on social media, you know? And again, that's, just this thing lends all kinds of ways to embarrass our district, embarrass our schools, embarrass our administrators, and teachers, you name it. But if you kill this sucker and you didn't have that anymore at the school, we're done with all that nonsense.
I would propose. You write it up, or the policy and. Okay, as far as what I think we agree on right now is maybe to add the word academics on the existing policy.
Directed academic.
And yeah, and then the other thing is enforcement. You know, we gotta be consistent throughout our high school with our teachers, and that comes down to the whole thing. You know, we gotta crack down. If one teacher puts away the cell phone, it's our policy when I walk in the classroom, for academic purposes only, at your discretion. And if I see him, walking in and 15 students are on Facebook, I'll have a talk with you as far as that.
Of the teacher and principal, that's what I would say. If the teachers then agree that they're gonna do it, but that for you as principals, you know that they're doing that. Because they have to do lesson plans, right? Or do we get rid of lesson plans? I'm saying something. Right?
Always less.
Right, okay. Well, if they're gonna use it, they're not using it every day, but they certainly can put that into their lesson plans, so you as a principal are aware of that. I think that's even fairer, because it goes in line what you're saying, academic, because we are doing lesson plans.
To your point, I would say that they would use the cell phone if the district device is not available.
And or putting that caveat in as well. I mean, I'm not really a big believer on this one, but that's right.
And to echo Mr. Verdugo's statement right now, the trajectory in terms of our use even this year, the last couple of years, it is getting better. I think Laggy, the new optical that was done over the summer, we're starting to see the fruits of that, so it's getting less and less of an issue, so to what has been said, I don't feel that currently cell phone or having to deal with cell phone issues is currently a headache for me. That I feel it's currently, just to share that for.
So it sounds more like it's directed.
Because Rebecca did her job. So you got handed a good school.
So I think right now, if the board comes to a consensus, add in academics or when the internet is down.
Yeah, when the
It's still
district
at the-
device is not available.
Still at the teacher's discretion.
Agree.
I don't know.
I like the directed because Mr. Kramer's point on the specific directed academic research.
Okay.
I think would cover, internet's down, the principal teacher would say, for academic purposes, please use your WAP, what have you, so.
And having the buy-in with your principal. I think that's fair. It's a working relationship anyway. And if you guys know your teachers, you know that they're ones that are not using it properly. Let's put it that way.
It's this is what I'm gonna suggest then, is that we could change this today, that here on 30, where it says cell phones and other electronic communication. Students shall not use a cell phone or other electronic communication device except for specific direct
No, during class time.
academic.
During
Just a moment, just a moment. Just a moment. Except for specific academic. Except for specific direct academic purposes, and then during class time. Without the express permission of the teacher or principal. Yeah.
And or.
Can I make a motion? Are we doing motion?
No, we're.
You just want to hear what my version is. Okay, cell phones and other electronic communications. The student shall not use a cell phone or other electronic communication device during class time without the express permission of the teacher for directed academic research. During class time, a cell phone or other electronic communication shall be turned off and placed in the student's purse or backpack. A student shall not record or transmit speech or other communications of other persons without those persons express consent.
It's pretty much the same thing.
That program was already there.
I like the.
She just added 4 words.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I was just.
Input from the principal, since this will be. Would you change wording or?
I would change the word research to for academic purposes, because that cuts out a lot of the
Like the Kahoot and
ability.
all that kind of stuff.
Not just research,
It's
it's.
not just research, it's everything.
Yeah.
Because a math teacher could use it too.
So instead of research.
Purposes,
Yeah.
graphic calculator, what have you.
Yeah.
I still think the principal should be made aware of it.
Teacher and or principal.
Well, I think the principal should be made aware of it. So then you guys know that they're using it for that purpose.
That day, so
Well,
if
yes.
so if the internet's down, we're gonna use the phones.
Well, if you know that, then there would be a general consensus among the teachers, right? Because I think that's important what you just said. But then that's as a principal, you have, again, the principal should have that power to say, hey, the internet's down, we understand. For whatever reason, I know that you guys are going to be using the kids are gonna be using your cell phones. You've already made that general clear to everyone. You're the principal, you're doing that. It may not be at that every site. Again, the onus and responsibility, we got the principals, they're the ones.
And for the most occasions, we already know when that happens, because if it's widespread.
Right.
They reach out to us and they would tell us.
Then exactly.
Is it part of, is it particular part of campus or is it the entire campus? And then typically we let all teachers know, because what we also want to support teachers is that, you know, we might be made aware of that situation. Mr. Knoip's room maybe starts there and then it goes to mine. Prevent this, everybody's panicking. What we typically do is just alert everybody so everyone's aware. So, yeah, that's typically practice.
Or a while could go down
Correct.
in a classroom and.
Exactly.
What are the consequences, Jordan? Going back to what was asked earlier, what are the consequences in our district?
Saga to Jubilant. Saga went, I don't know. Did you wanna?
Disrespect to authority was the first.
Correct. So typically it's that the teacher is that initial step, right? It's educating the student, but then if it's becomes a problem, then is the practice that was implemented in Guadalupe, which I believe works well, is the student currently, they go to the front office and the phone is kept at the front office for a day. And they pick it up at the end of that day. Second occurrence then is the parent who has to pick it up, and it's a week. So it increases in time and then it's the week. Then what the practice is when the parent comes in, it's a conversation. That's the point, to engage the family and educate both the student and the parent of the reasonings behind it. It's not just you can have it, but it's, you know, we go through it before and so forth, et cetera, but there's that element of, you know, that progressive, that if it gets to 4 step, then at that point, then it would be consequences in school suspension, not a school suspension. So it just progressively goes through that. Currently, we haven't gotten to the point of, it's been one and it's been on non-issue beyond 1 day picking up by the student.
I'll just say, back in the days when the phones were fairly cheap, at the end of the year, I always had at least a dozen phones. Because parents didn't come pick it up because the child lost it, or the parent said, I don't care, keep it. Seriously, I know they're more expensive now, but still, there were times where.
Makes sense. Cause that's when we got free phones. Then a contract. I was like, good luck with that. $200.
Right. Yeah, nobody wants that.
My little snake game on my Nokia, my first phone.
Flip phone.
They are.
I don't know if Calabasas has the.
Tell you,
drawer
you
full
keep
of
it.
iPods and
just keep it. I'll pick it up.
Cell phones, so.
Okay.
Yes,
Some parents will.
those are the same parents that have gone through things like this, certainly.
All right, we take a look at it.
Yeah, so up on the updated version.
I just didn't know how you guys wanted to say that.
I like it the way it is.
We added, the only addition was, except for direct academic purposes.
Teacher should.
Well, that business of electronic communication, do I tell you that kind of, it sounds like you can't use a laptop during,
Well, they will try to keep their watch off.
be specific and say, smartphone.
Personal,
Yeah, you can say
personal, because we already know that they can issue a laptop.
And I don't like this too open.
Right,
Stop
right
them
here.
from using a laptop or right, if you say it just in general, then you can't use a laptop or a Chromebook.
I think the personal.
That's better.
Sweaty time. Taken care of by the. No.
Teacher grants with it. Permission.
The one in red.
Yeah.
The changes.
And the one that says personal electronic communication.
Yeah. And other personal abundance.
Cell phones or other.
You said
No, and then where it says, students shall not use the cell phone or other electronic communication device. I think we should put personal electronic. There you go. Otherwise, that should be construed as.
And I don't think that this sentence makes, I don't know how to make, how you want to communicate that. How do you want it to read that the teacher is going to communicate to the administrator that they allowed them to use the cell phone in the
Teachers shall
class?
communicate approved cell
Yeah.
phone usage,
Yes.
approved cell phone. I think the rationale was so that principals would then, oh, you did that for TikTok? Yeah, no, that's not, next time don't do that.
Exactly.
To make them aware of the choices the teachers are making.
And that they already know, because they check their lesson plans, that they know on Thursday, I'm walking in there, I know that the beach is using his cell phones that day for that purpose.
Or internet went
Or
down.
then going back to.
Which is telling.
Well, we got one done in a couple hours.
Yeah.
Something, but still gotta make the concert tonight. Yeah.
Okay, so then do we vote?
I think this was one of the.
That's the evidence. All right. So is the board coming with that?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll, it's a separate item, so, because we still have, dress code to address.
Yeah.
And then approve this change.
Dress code.
Yeah, so now we're looking at, we want to.
That time.
Sure, 5 minutes, just the bathroom and that kind of thing.
It's gonna save me.
I know.
Mira, para que veas.
Got a little carried away. Got a lot of work to do. Yes, so we to student hire. Permit policy. And you move to the previous item, next slide where we had more comments. Yeah, so again, there were some of the comments made in the previous meeting when we said table this for today to review and discuss, so. Turn over to you, President, and in order to comments of how I want to.
Well, usually I'll start off this time. I'll just say that there's only one thing that I really would like to see beyond what's already on there and the changes that we discussed at other governing board meetings. And that's just to make sure that in the end of this, we have an all-encompassing rule that says that the principal leave it in the hands of the principal so that if the principal deems something to be inappropriate, they can take action on it. But I already mentioned that, I think that was typed in there, right? Whatever the principal deems to be inappropriate, or the power will not be used to things to be inappropriate within the scope of the law. That was what I had mentioned at the last governing board meeting. And I think that if you do that, you leave it in the hands of the principal. And I like that because, I mean, not every single principal in this room, I trust your judgment. I know that you would say, this is appropriate, this is inappropriate. So we have that all encompassing rule. Really, then we don't have to discuss things that we can't even dream about here right now, that, with regard to attire. And the things that Mr. Kramer brought up, right, we're like, well, shoes aren't on there, and then I said, well, I don't remember, we just come up with so many instances like that. But we say in the very end that, okay, students may not use clothing that principals deem inappropriate. That just is an all-encompassing rule that I think just leaves it in their hands so that they, any kind of situation that comes up, they make the call in the end. And I kind of like that because like when we have Spirit Week, and kids dress up differently, and they might wear a hat for Spirit Week, like a nerd, or they wear clothing that may violate the rules. The principal can always, it always falls on them, and then they can decide, hey, they can decide all the circumstantial situations. And I like that because it really should be in, I like that all encompassing rule. But that's fair, right, Mr. Ridley?
I'm adding it to the bottom. I just shared it with you.
Yeah.
I just added,
Thought it was there in the comments, but I didn't read it before.
oh.
On the prohibited attire, the last bullet.
Yeah, the principal.
Within the scope of the law, and I like within the scope of the law because I always think it was one real importance is about that. You also have to be careful because you have to live within the scope of the law. So there you go.
What is the scope of the law?
Yes, define that.
Like for instance, you might say, well, this girl is violating because she's showing too much cleavage, well, how much cleavage? And then you get into all these things, and are you violating the students' rights as a citizen, you know?
Don't say girl, you just gotta wear.
Could.
Wears.
I didn't say that, it's not in there, if you read it, it doesn't say, it doesn't have gender.
So I understand it, but what I think that we might get in a little bit of a legal issue is the word appropriate. You gotta be specific on the scope of the law as far as, is there a law? Where is the scope of the law?
Within the scope of the law that, not even federal or state law.
I'm just looking at this. I would like to see the scope of the law. Deems appropriate, I'm not sure because, say for instance, on the principal, I see a girl, maybe it's wearing a blouse with I don't know, I think that inappropriate. I call her parents come in and they give her a thing that goes. Another girl was wearing the same thing, but you know, I overlooked it. And now the principal is dealing with a parent that, well, you allow this even, you know, and you're allowing 5 others and you're not holding them accountable. Where the principal, if it's not specific, might get in trouble as far as if you get a proactive parent coming in and saying, you know, my friend's sister wore the same outfit, but yet you kind of one and not the other. So I'm not sure if we need to be specific or, you know, allow the principal to have that much power to say this is appropriate, this is appropriate. In the scope of the law, what, I'm still confused on what that law is. Is it dealing with our policies that are in place? Or do we need to create a law?
Can I say something?
I was just gonna ask,
Exactly.
so Mr. Beach, if you go back to what the purpose is, and in general, probably the purpose of having a drug code to ensure that there's not disruption to educational process. So I think that would be, the point at which that would be your baseline for what you might be referring to as the, you know, within legal standards or legal, appropriate. It would be that, you know, the administrator has determined that based on what your appearance, that you're disrupting the educational process. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be that, I'm just saying if we tie it back to one of those core areas, then I think we could use language that would still meet the spirit of what you're trying, what Mr. Ramirez is wanting to be able, I think, to give the administrators the right to say that this is disrupting what's happening at school.
Can I add something to that? I like this. School administration reserves the right to determine if a student's dress or appearance, like you
Stop.
said, disrupts the educational process or is a safety issue. Because like a simple thing that came up, but it doesn't come up a lot, we had a few boys come in wearing spurs. You know, once again, it's not a common thing. I don't think it should necessarily be delineated in the dress code, but certainly having a dress code that says something like that, like we're gonna have this dress code for a safety purpose, it would encompass spurs or spikes or different things that might just not be safe. And then disrupting the educational process. Like on Friday, we had homecoming fun, you know, kids dress up silly and it's wonderful. So, I mean, one kid came in a banana costume. I didn't see any issue that wasn't disruptive, but one kid came in a huge blow up Cartman costume, you know, and I had to ask the student not to, you know, not to wear that costume because it was very big and bulky and disruptive and, you know. So I like this.
So you say spikes, so can you wear spiked collars?
Spurs.
I know you said spurs, but then I heard spikes. But can you wear spiked collars then?
I really haven't seen them at all, but I've seen them in the past. That's why I'm saying if you just added something,
That's not a trend anymore.
it's not a trend anymore. I have.
Those were used to be allowed because you could take them off, put them on your hand, you've got a weapon.
So that's why I'm saying if you just add some language about safety.
There's two, yeah.
3-4 years ago, yeah, it was a lot of students wearing them. They stopped using them, like 1-2 years ago, they stopped.
So are baseball caps allowed then
Yeah, they can be worn.
And I was,
in class?
No.
Hats are allowed.
It doesn't, we don't have anything that specifically.
No, I know, this is, I don't know, what about the middle schools? Can they wear caps?
They wear caps, just not indoors.
I feel like we live in the desert.
came up a few years ago, change. Because of sun.
Well, yeah, I don't mind caps outside, but in the classrooms, but we don't have it listed.
And then the reason the cap thing came about is because it could be construed as gang attire.
That was, but then when it came back as allowing students, it was the Shack that had brought it back years ago, because of, sun protection.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
the reason why I'm saying this, and I'm not trying to overstep the boundaries. But again, the more we have listed as a board, the more it gives you that security of, it's the board policy.
Right.
Not so much, not that the autonomy is important. But the board policies, and then you can utilize that. It was so easy to say as a principal, well, that's board policy, I'm just enforcing the board policy. You know, if they then have a concern about it, they can come in front of the board and, or the superintendent first, and then to the board and discuss that. But I'm just trying to set that to throw in rules or regs. But baseball caps, then we probably should have that in there under the parameters that you are following at the schools. Anything that you have, that's not on this list of item number 10, maybe we should put that in.
It's not just classrooms though, right, Mr. Verdugo, it's all, that's. You go to honors assembly, you shouldn't be wearing them
Indoors, anything indoors.
You know, and then everything else, I mean, it's just. Whatever you just decided, but maybe you should give that list to us so we can add that in. I'm just saying, it gives you, it gives us a better realm of coverage.
I don't have a list of things to add.
The list is on the policy already.
But it's not, there's no baseball caps.
I just added it right below. Says all headwear must
Speaking,
not.
as you're speaking it.
All right, AI.
I'm in, yeah. All headwear must allow the face to be visible and not interfere with the line of sight of any student or staff, except clothing or headwear worn for health and safety, medical or religious purposes. That we have to have in there. Headwear shall not be worn indoors. That means teachers, anybody, if we do it that way, then we just say like, we don't wear hats.
But
inside.
headwear religiously, you say it's okay indoors.
Yeah, it says right there, except clothing, headwear, yeah, headwear shall not be
You have
worn indoors.
students that are.
Right.
That's why I like that one. Where. That's one that's all encompassing. The principal deems inappropriate because. Then like on Spirit Week, when the kid wants to wear something and it violates one of these rules, it's called as it is.
What about shoes?
Cause all of that is here in the comments, the ones that we.
Right,
have.
what
This-
about,
this
I'm
is
just
what we
looking at,
wanted.
what about shoes?
Yeah, this is,
I didn't add anything from your
Just
list.
asking the school, what about shoes? Can the kids come barefoot?
Well, are they coming barefoot?
No, they're not.
No.
No, but I mean, again, Brad, you always gotta look at that one rebel.
Yeah.
It's always that rebel.
Well, you gotta have.
That rebel that's watching right now and just heard me say that, and then is gonna go after that and say, well,
Give them the idea.
well, exactly.
I,
But you always stop it before it happens. You're being proactive rather than reactive.
I think that would fall under the safety hazard if, shoes are required under Arizona statute in a public building, so I think it would,
yeah,
it would be a catch-all. I mean, I think we could spend a lot of time listing like I think a lot, but I do think that catch-all kind of helps. If there's a way you guys can think to use better adjectives, you could say it.
If someone comes without shoes, we can reference this safety hazard. It's a safety hazard to the student to not have shoes on. If there's rocks and other people walking with
Also,
spurs.
Are open toe shoes?
open-toed shoes are not, they're not, it's not even restricted in our staff dress code. Different departments have certain requirements for job-related things, but for students, no, we've never been.
Other than like the farm, obviously you got.
Yeah, so like there are certain rules to attend certain labs which are enforced. I know, like, for example, if they want to go to the farm, there sometimes we have to have the aide come back up and stay with the students who aren't dressed appropriately, so.
For staff, we have it at the warehouse.
Department, yeah, special ed, they're required to wear closed-toed shoes. Transportation, they cannot wear certain footwear. And then we have certain student groups as well, so like I mentioned, like, you know, heavy equipment, ag farm. Culinary arts has very specific rules with their dress code as well. I don't think it's less restrictive or outside any of these general boundaries. I think in most cases it's more restrictive. ROTC, there are certain uniforms that they're required to wear, so there's a lot of specific dress codes for programs. I do know those exist.
I wonder if we're being a little redundant. If you look at the first bullet, attire may be prohibited when it significantly interferes with the district's ability to maintain order, such as disrupting schoolwork, school programs and activities, creates disorder, or prevents any students from achieving objectives. In the first red bullet, it sort of says the same thing.
So this was, this bullet, it'd be existing, what the.
Compared to the first red bullet.
In comparison to, yeah.
Maybe we can tweak the first one if you wanna add the dress or appearance. But it does say attire may be prohibited when it.
I think the first red, well, if you scroll up a little bit,
I can't.
Oh,
Shannon.
well, there it goes. Attire may be prohibited when it, then it lists all those things, and I think
Right.
the first red bullet should really just be an asterisk at the bottom that says the principal can determine when anything else should meets that criteria. So in other words, that first red bullet's really not a bullet at all. I think it's just a sentence at the end, giving broad latitude to the principals to make, they reserve the right to determine if. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But with the first bullet, wouldn't they have that right regardless?
Yes.
The first black bullet?
Yes. With attire, with anything that creates disorder.
It's saying it's attire is prohibited when it significantly interferes, so who determines?
When it, with the districts, what? Districts.
Any item that significantly interferes with the district's ability to maintain order.
So
Okay,
you
so-
would be
so
principal.
someone thinks the blouse is too low cut and is disruptive, someone else thinks it's not, so who makes the determination? Principal.
So we could add that as an asterisk.
I think that first red bullet should just not be a bullet, it's just,
Can you scroll down?
So if you look at how the policy is written, that first bullet, maybe it's part of the introduction where it says student attire may be regulated as necessary. It's part of the intro, and then the first bullet is that red bullet. Just the top.
so there, what you have now, I think, is what I was trying to say. Those asterisks at the bottom, the district reserves the right to determine what meets the standard or.
Yep.
Can I make a second? With the board, consider now or in the future, a lot of this is what not to do, and we talk about four why, so there's safety hazard, disruption. A lot of the other things I think that are unspoken in terms of dress code is, portrait of a graduate attributes. Things like, so wearing pajama pants, anything low cut, high cut, whatever, any of that sort of stuff, where we get into opinions about what's appropriate. Ms. Vasquez, a few meetings ago, you were very eloquent about your expectations for females and so on. In my mind, where we're going with portrait of a graduate is encompassing of those sorts of things and remove some of the opinions about what a parent might think is appropriate or whatnot. It's fine to wear that to school. Well, not if you're trying to teach, well, self-esteem. If Shannon can try and find them for us, there we go. Critical and creative and critical thinkers, engaged citizens. Under each of those four quadrants are bulleted details about attributes we want each student to graduate with. So we want confident adults going into the world. I think it's, in my mind as a principal, it would be easier to make that argument that wearing pajamas isn't helping your kid be ready for workforce.
Right.
Whether I like the pajamas or not is irrelevant. It's not helping them be ready for the workforce. But in my mind, I would just encourage the board to think about portrait of a graduate.
Concur. However, if they're going to U of A or ASU,
Well,
That's what you bring up that.
They can wear pajamas.
yes.
PJs, status quo.
And I'm not discounting, I think, Steve, I concur. If you're gonna roll into that, then we're starting getting into political messages. I mean, that's the next step of what is allowed and what's not allowed, or most of it's allowed, depending on where you're at and what message is being said.
true, and if we talk about semi-formal, what do we, business casual, right? So one business, some Fortune 500 companies where, you know, shirt and tie, that's
I'm
it.
thinking more political messages, more stuff that is trending right now. You know, where we had to, like I brought up the example of the "Don't Tread on Me" Wisconsin flag, where that assistant principal didn't know her history. Yet then they rectified it and said, this is what it is. I'm just using that as an example. Now, you've got other instances of going across this country of what nationality flag is good and what is bad and everything to that effect. What's wrong with a person wearing a picture of a race car driver using the terminology that was being said, but everyone knows what the actual meaning is. So, I mean, those things we don't encounter, but we may encounter, yet the boards that didn't have it, they weren't prepared for what they had to do with that. I'm just saying that, not that we're gonna have it.
Is that covered by the giving the principal?
Well, that's just it, is now what is his interpretation of that? Because that was the same thing in Colorado. They had that generic statement and she interpreted it as, that's bad.
To go to that point is where it says if it, causes
Shannon, can you go up?
the district's ability to maintain. So if somebody's wearing, and I think it happened in Mesa where the student was waving a MAGA flag. And they asked him to put the flag away, he refused. And they allowed him to continue to wear his MAGA shirt, but
Not to wait.
not to wave the flag.
Right.
So I think that's, if it causes that disruption, I think.
But I'm just talking about shirts. I wasn't getting into the flag waving because we already know what flag waving does to this district. So I'm just saying that for their sake of, we've got them covered as a board. So he's not making that interpretation where, not that you're going to, the three of you, but I think as a board, we need to. You know, where are we gonna, do we need to bring it up? Do we need to have it in? Or is it, as you just said, is it encompass it? And then he makes that interpretation. If his interpretation is challenged and comes to us, obviously then we're gonna have to make that interpretation.
Wow, I mean, we're getting really hair splitting here. I mean, I have faith that they're gonna, what they deem.
But it's not hair splitting, Renee, when it's already been happening and it's happened. Well, we were hair splitting before for 10 words for.
But we have to have some way to, otherwise, if we don't have an all-encompassing rule, then we could discuss hundreds of thousands of instances that we couldn't even dream of right now at the governing board meeting. There's just so many that are out there that you could come up with. You can come up with all those rules. So if you just leave it, if we have an all-encompassing rule, then we can just say this is inappropriate, and I trust them.
I'm not discounting that it's not the point.
No, and I think to Mr. Kramer.
I know what you're saying. I understand it, but that's.
If somebody questions why.
So we got their back.
Yeah, and that, so the legal standing, so like if somebody sues, Mr. Canoy before saying that they can't wear a MAGA shirt.
Right, you have to have something to fall back on.
So we as a board are protecting them. That's why I'm not trying to micromanage.
If we get specific and start saying the brands that you can and cannot wear, something else is gonna come up. And students are gonna say, it's not on this list of prohibited.
It's not
See, that's what I
You
don't.
have to have a general.
That's why I like hanging on within the scope of the law, because then you're not breaking anybody's laws or violating anybody's rights or any of that.
Well, we have it under constitutional rights. So we'll leave it at that. And the interpretation of the Constitution can be then fought with our.
Yeah. There you go.
So it's really updates.
Mr. Verdugo, I would, before I make a student take off a political shirt, I'm gonna call up Dr. Winterville and say, I find this shirt offensive. Before I pull this student into my office, I want your feedback. And I know that the principals that you supervise and that you supervise, you're gonna do the same thing. And I don't wanna end up on national news.
Well, and I think for the most part, you wanna decide the why behind what you're doing. Why are we addressing that if it's not creating
A disruption.
a disruption? if it is creating a disruption or has the ability to do so or harm someone, then yeah, I mean, but
And you also said, I find that, you said two things.
Fine.
Disruption, but then also I find it offensive.
I
So
find.
you might find it offensive, but it might not be reasonably expected to cause a disruption on campus.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it might, yeah.
And I have, as a principal, I do have personal experience with some of that, it's like the I love boobies. bracelet. One had a picture of breasts on one side, the other side said save a breast. I just asked the student to flip to the save a breast and they sent me to 9 on your side and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Because I was prohibiting their use of, and then I did an interview and a cancer survivor myself, they were like, oh, sorry. So it was, but again, it's what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, and I think there's compromise that you can do to keep those messages out there, but also do it in a way that's not disrupting the educational process.
If I could, I think, I know we kind of talked about it and then we kind of went into another area, but I want to kind of go back to the footwear conversation that we were having, because we don't have anything that prohibits that prohibits the, open toe shoes and that kind of stuff. And the question that comes up quite often, and I'm speaking for myself, and I'm sure Dago hears about it as well, Crocs. And where are we kind of on that? And I'm sure Dominic hears about it every once in a while. I'm sure that he hears about it. Exactly. So we all hear about the Croc argument, and I'm just looking at open toe shoes versus Crocs. And if we're looking at it from, I feel like Crocs are honestly more safe than open toe shoes are.
I mean, what, does it present a safety hazard? Ask yourself those two questions and use some common, you have to, there's an element of common sense in this. If you're running around jumping on playground equipment and you're not in sports mode, or you're in sports mode or whatever, like your Croc could go flying off, the kid, could be injured. A high school student going from sixth period to basketball practice, which they put slides on all the time. I mean, to that, I think that's using some common sense. A middle school student, if they have PE, Crocs are not acceptable for wearing PE. So it kind of goes back to that, like listing every single thing I think we're gonna run into. There's always gonna be something. For a while, it was the rolly shoes, then it was the weird transfer shoe.
Oh, yeah.
Then it was the springs, now it's Crocs. I mean, it's gonna change as, Doc Martens have come back. Do we want those? If you kick someone in the face with a Doc Marten, they're gonna sustain an injury, right? Do we wanna start looking at that? I mean, I think having that open ability for you to determine the student in front of you and what's happening is probably.
An all-encompassing goal. Mr. Kramer Mr. Kramer had stated, sort of saying within the scope of the law, more specifically to what he had said, I think we're good. Cause you can't, otherwise we could write hundreds of thousands of rules here, things that we don't even think about right now. Hey, listen, I'd like to go back to this one. I like this to put on there, prohibited attire. Under prohibited attire may be prohibited when it does not cover one's back or front torso. That should be on there, cause that's not on there. This way it covers everything. These other ways we're gonna have arguments about how much or what, or then kids get cute, wear tube tops, right, and all kinds of interesting things.
And again, this is to what the point was earlier, that is not distinguishing between male or female, it is just
Anybody.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And the other one, when it's inappropriate for the sport or school activity as outlined by school policy and coaches. I think that's pretty clear cut. The next one, when it's an undergarment or appears to be, when it is an undergarment or appears to be like one's undergarment, because we've had issues with that. Kids that wear stuff, they say, well, it's not really an undergarment. That's exactly what I want.
It's just. Sorry, the internet.
What?
And that, like the see-through clothing. See-through. The one that Mr. Chavez was asking, the top must have shoulder straps and it has to have armpit to armpit rule. He didn't know what it was, but it's straight across. That way you alleviate the problem of having, you know, like cleavages and all that neat stuff.
I think using fully cover.
Yeah.
An individual's front,
And back covers all of that.
kind of.
I like that. I was thinking about John Kazoo with the coaches thing, cause. Hope you guys don't mind, but one time he made them, when I was first a coach with him. He made the kids stand up and he said, all right, guys, I want you, and I was wondering what he was gonna do. He made them get their practice jersey. He goes, all right, I want you to pick your practice jersey up to here. He did, and then you could see all their chonas sticking out. Of the side. He said, you, get on the line. We're trying to achieve this.
With does not fully cover an individual's front and back torso.
It's just.
Torso starts probably at the shoulders down to the waistline. And I'm thinking females and, you know, the ladies out there where they have the blouses that come a little lower. So the armpit to armpit rule would be in violation of the torso rule. Or do we leave it up to the principal to just all encompassing?
Did you guys happen to see in the other districts, samples that I sent in?
I saw that.
I think that might have, if I can look for a second, I will, to see if there's something that might
I saw that.
better describe it.
Okay.
There are athletic team uniforms that are in violation of this
Right.
dress code.
Our volleyball, spandex.
Swim, wrestling, a lot exposed. I'm just throwing that out there.
Other than sports required.
Okay.
Yeah, you could just, yeah, that's a good way. Tag that on wrestling.
Wrestling always violates everything.
Aside from sports.
We're comfortable in our own skin.
Cross country, like runners this morning.
Miranda has, a shirt with fabric in the front, back, and on the side, under the arms, and bottoms, pants, jeans that are the equivalent of a skirt, sweatpants, leggings. So they listed, the shirt had to have a front, a back, and on sides and underarms, meaning it can't be like cut out on the underarms.
And see, even with that description, it
I
could
know.
be sheer.
Yeah, I mean, I think having the principal have the.
I think that is just the all encompassing rule, just that way it leaves it up to them and they can determine, they can deem what's appropriate, but I like what Mr. Lugo said about the aside from sports related wear, I like that too. Then that covers that.
Gilbert has clothing must cover all private, I don't know what they are, defining as private, body parts and must not be see-through.
I don't like that because then people are gonna start arguing with you about whether a belly button is private or not, you know?
Tops and one-piece outfits must be secured with material at the shoulders or neck. That's another, I was just giving you guys some examples.
Yeah, I read them. I never really liked it.
Yeah.
Too much, to be honest with you. I did read them. Dr. Lunderville, I did.
Yeah, so there weren't any that you wanted to try, okay. Borrow.
But I like some of the ones my colleagues had. I was reading some of the stuff that you guys had said. I thought we were good.
So back to the torso, how would you like that amended?
I did go this.
Well, at the administration has sort of full leeway on
This one would-
what
this
they
one
deem
would-
appropriate.
the one that
and
goes
Inappropriate,
from,
wonder if we
that's
even
okay.
have to have it up there. Cause on a couple bullets down, you got exposed, where's midriff, undergarments or undergarment areas. So they're not showing the stomach, and I think the torso, that's what we're sort of focused on, is this area
Yeah, 'cause I think
and the open back.
the open back, I think that's been the issue.
So I think if we gotta be specific, just remove torso and be more specific on,
Exposes the wearer's midriff, back. You wanna add the word back after midriff?
Yeah, I think so.
If we get too specific, then we don't have an all encompassing rule, and then they can throw all kinds of stuff at us. For instance, I'll give you the one that we had talked about one day with the straps. You know, you can't show your shoulder strap, so then a kid wears a tube top.
Yeah.
There you go, I don't have any shoulder straps anymore. It's just so ridiculous, that's why you can say, leave it up to the principal, you know, that what they deem appropriate and inappropriate. And as, who's that, yeah, as Mr. Knight stated, I mean, he's not gonna make a move without talking to the admin before he's gonna do anything. So come on now.
Some things are obvious and some things are not. And all of the principals and assistant principals know and seek.
When it's being disruptive.
Yes.
Ms. Tolano, I think, because we started talking about this last year. It wasn't something that we just, I mean, compared, what would you, I know that the students at first, it was, they struggled a little bit with one understanding. But now I feel like even if we have girls that will come up and even say like, is this too, I don't know if you wanted to.
I think the clearer we are, the better it's easier for me to try to, impose it on students, and the students are willing to follow what we have to some extreme. I think, it's, the kids are doing great with what we have. It's just that small percentage of students that try to get away with stuff. I mean, overall, dress code has improved tremendously. I think that they do want to follow the rules. It's not that they don't, it's just it leaves a little area for, we say wear a shirt, they wear the shirt, midriff. Maybe the shirt is a little too big this year, too small this year compared to last year, so they're showing a little bit of skin. Is this okay? We don't wanna go to tuck it in, because then we have the bigger kids, having an issue with that and how that makes them feel. I like Mr. Canoy keeps saying, I will do whatever the board says. I feel like if you, and Ms. Favion was there yesterday at our assembly, I think she could see the difference. And I think we're going in the right direction. It's just, it's up to you how strict you want to get. By all means, I feel the kids want to live up to our expectations. It's just, everybody has a different opinion.
so what do you think the one issue that you see that some of the issues that we need to be more clear on as a board policy that you would like to see implemented? Is there, like you said, a girl came up and said this, and it's not part of our policy and you kind of say it's inappropriate. Is there anything specific you'd like us to add to help your job?
Just, we run into issues when it comes to, of course, cleavage. Because, not necessarily because we don't have the word, but because women are built differently. And so it's really hard to make a one size fit all. We run into issues, and it's not just a female issue. We have males with the same issue where they wanna wear tank tops. And so then it's not just a female issue, it's like a male issue. So I think, I don't know how we can make it better. I clicked at all of the sample dress codes. I don't know. What do we feel comfortable with, and what do parents feel comfortable with? High school is difficult and we have all shapes and forms and it, I mean, I don't. I like I like the armpit to armpit because it would solve the cleavage, but then when you run into other issues with something else. The shorts, the girls, the boys and girls. Is there a length? Do you want a length? I mean, I don't know. I don't know that even. I mean, extreme cases, we don't really have a lot of those anymore. We don't have, I think. This year, they know not that it wasn't being followed the prior year, it's just when you say. We're leaving it up to the administration, well, we're composed of 3 different minds. And we have to sit and actually say, well, is this appropriate? It goes through 3 different people. And even when teachers, I have someone showing up first period and maybe the teacher didn't feel it was inappropriate in first period, and then we don't get to it till the 4th period. Because then by the time 4th period teacher sees that, it is like, and 4th period is lunch.
Very good.
So I just do feel we're making a lot of gains. We don't need to overkill, the process because we have what we need right there. But if you as the board feel we need to be more strict, then we would like more clear direction.
Cause I was thinking on the same lines as far as implementing a armpit to armpit rule. At least that gives you a little leeway that says, you know what, you might be showing a little cleavage, boy or girl, but it's way below the policy we have in place. At least that gives you something to go by. It goes back to Mr. Shadler as far as the portrait of a high school graduate, is it appropriate for a high school student to wear a white beater shirt or a tank top, a tank top to school when we're trying to promote success after high school? Like, none of us can control our work like that. So, that's where I'm at. Like, is tank tops appropriate? On that. But I would like to see the armpit to armpit rule added. That covers you. Well, you picked on this girl, but you're not picking on this girl. Well, now everything's the same, you're here.
I don't even understand the armpit to armpit.
So you go armpit right here.
Well,
No.
it is several.
Armpit right here.
I'm just saying, I think you're gonna have a lot of people who sadly like me, ones and me.
They're gonna have to explain it, but it goes from here, your armpit, the bottom, all the way across.
Expose your shoulders though, not a tube.
That's why they'll wear the tube top. You would have to add additional, says that there are sleeves that are.
Yeah, but even with the two top.
Yeah, the tube top though.
You can't go lower.
Can't go lower.
But you don't want them wearing tube.
No, we want them to have sleeves, so then that adds a whole other area that we have to address, like.
That's why.
And spaghetti straps.
Yeah, so you.
If they have a shirt with spaghetti.
Armpit and sleeves.
Yeah, but then, I mean, even some. Like cap sleeves look sleeveless, like I even wear cap sleeves sometimes where they like come like that. I wear cap sleeves a lot and that would be out of the dress code. Even though there's nothing you can really see there, my arm is exposed and then,
So I wasn't really here's how we word it so that it does cover everything. I mean.
So the way.
we have enough to cover it and it becomes, every year, we're going to experience changes in our leadership. And every year, we're gonna have to have these discussions. It kind of comes down to the administrator and the principal's ability to have their team be on the same page and have conversations about what they're going to agree is appropriate, not appropriate.
Again, that's why an all-encompassing rule is so important, because then we don't have to discuss all of these ridiculous details. I mean, nobody here, no principal here is going to make a move without talking to the admin, to your team, and asking them, and then you'll advise them, and I trust you guys.
I think from my perspective, I think just looking at this, I'm trying to think, okay, what are the issues, the specific issues that we're having? And I know Mr. Beach, you kind of asked that to Claudia, like we're having the issues with cleavage. We're having the issues with the midriff, all the way around, right? So we're having that length. So I think giving us some kind of guidelines to address those specific things. And then everything else we can have as kind of open to our.
Right, but you
I
can't
don't want
specifically
discretion.
pick out two pieces of
But I'm just,
something.
yeah, I'm just saying like, that's why I like the armpit to armpit, 'cause at least that gives us a line. You know what I mean? At least to address the cleavage
You
part.
can pick at any one of those rules. You could say armpit, okay. I'm wearing something that has armpit to armpit, but wow, it really drops right here and it shows all my cleavage. It really gets ridiculous.
straight across.
It's straight across.
But nobody said straight across.
What armpit to armpit means.
Because you could have armpit to armpit, it's here and it's here, but it drops here. Nobody said straight across, so if you wanna be
Straight across.
specific, straight across.
I also think we just have to be very careful because whatever we put in the student handbook, the administrators need to make sure that you're able to hold the staff to the same level. So I can't say that a lot of our staff are you gonna dress code them every day too? I mean, that's what you have to decide as a team.
Okay, thank you for bringing that, because I think it's important, the conversation to reflect that, the standard of, there's basic level of expectations for our students that we, as staff members, we model that, and we, in my view, that we raise, we're about that and we're exemplars of professionalism, and that includes, so I think that's an element that I think is important conversation. And one thing I'll say, because I know this is particularly reflective as a high school, because, us having uniform, that's something that, I think this provides us some support under, in terms of how our uniform policies are enforced and how we delineate them. So I think for middle school, I think we have what we need in terms of policy. But the other element that I would just like to bring, I think it's part of the trajectory of the district as we're moving towards student agency and student voice, that, I've really enjoyed being part of this study session. This first time that I do it, that I'm part of it. So I'm really enjoying the process and seeing how all these things are coming, because talk about policy. So with student voice, there's 3 levels that we're working in all of our classrooms, all of our schools. The first level of student voice is listening to our students. That's the first level. That's tier 1. But then we're moving towards level 2, which is collaborating with the adults. So in all of our classrooms, our students with the teachers are co-creating standard operating procedures, which means instead of a teacher saying, these are my classroom expectations, students as a learning community with the teachers are co-creating policies. And we call those SOPs, standard operating procedures. And then the third tier, the highest tier of student voice, is co-creating policy. So at that point, what I would like to suggest, and for future study sessions, and I'll pose this as a challenge to the board, not as a challenge in terms of opposition, but opportunity. How can the board provide opportunities, talk about empowering our students with having their voice heard and being part of these conversations and future study sessions when they also are part of the conversation. Because what we found, we're finding, and open to anybody to me has been enriching, and even not just at the high school, but moving down to the middle school, that students see things very similarly to us. That then we talk about ownership. That these are policies that are not the adults who are in the governing board, who are at the administrative level, who are putting them together. That they're co-constructed, and talk about the ownership and the power behind that. So that's one thing that I just want to be, because at the end of the day, all of this is centered around students' expectations and how we as adults expect them to behave and how they should act and what they should do in regards to cell phone, how they dress. But I think it's important for them to be part of it, because I think very similarly to us, they understand the level of professionalism and so that's one thing I know is not directly connected to it, but just big picture. I think it's important to, how do we do that? And I don't know how we do that, but I think, as a district, I think it's gonna be empowering for our students and a lot easier to enforce because they're part of the process.
Yeah, I think student voice is very, and what I've heard Charlotte state is that there is a concern of administration, and that's cleavage, midriff, and the length of skirts. That's something we do need to address and be a little bit more specific. That way it holds, standards straight across, cause like Ms. Solano said, we have 3-4 different administrators with. It might be appropriate for Doggle, but not for Chavez. It might be. Middle school, we used to do this, pull them down, show it, below the armpits. But now at the high school, they're trying to pull up, it's gonna be very confusing for our students. So I think just those 3 areas of concern, if we could be more specific at the board of, what is appropriate. And I think, Susan, the armpit to armpit is straight across from the bottom, all the way across, and it sort of covers the majority of melon. As far as the midriff, I think we addressed that. As far as skirt length, I don't think we've addressed it yet. Or in the finger length was one of them. Is that up there?
It was in the recommended from.
Right, and I don't know if the board wants to address that right now, but I think those 3 areas of concern we could knock out in, what do we got? 2 minutes left. And maybe get this, put on the agenda.
We would add some.
Make a motion with the recommended changes that Dr. Linderville has typed down.
I think what Mr. Beach is asking for more to be
Yeah.
specific to those 3
Three
areas.
yeah, so we would,
Does the board want that or no?
would you like to add those? So, the, armpit to armpit. I think we already, did you add the midriff coverage?
The midriff was already in there, along with the co-curricular activity part. for-
Covers front and back torso, so we don't have to worry about shoulder stuff.
I took that part out when we had said that we wanted to have it, that it's, that catch-all, we were gonna, when we started listing individuals, then I stopped because we had said that we were.
Yes. We have to have some kind of policy to make sure that they cover their shoulders and they're not wearing like spaghetti straps and all that kind of nonsense.
I think that's probably comes under the discretion of the principal.
Well, then a lot of it falls under the discretion.
But they're asking for 3 specific changes, one for cleavage, one for midriff, which is covered. The armpit covers the cleavage, and the next.
Is that what you're asking? Is that what the high school's asking?
I'm just asking for some, some kind of guidelines, because it is just like Claudia said, there's different administrators, like I might see something different than the other 2, and and there's, again, those are the 3 main areas. Everything else to me is
You can determine.
yeah, I can just determine it. But
Right,
there's
but-
certain things like, I'm just thinking about levels, right? Just like the level of this, that's kind of, and cause I can communicate that to our kids a lot easier. And just say, checking yourself before you put something on, Spirit Day, whatever. Cause obviously we have uniforms, but for Spirit Day or whatever the case may be, then,
Then you have the all-encompassing rule though.
yeah, then you have the all-encompassing rule, but I
So
just.
again, so armpit to armpit. No bare.
Either we put it here or we just decide amongst ourselves, like that's kind of what we're gonna do, and that's what the all-encompassing rule can cover, but I like having something at least in my head that I know kind of what to do.
Heather, did you, when you guys met as an admin, you discussed what you were gonna determine to be appropriate and inappropriate at school? Like when when all of you met together, did you guys go through that and say like, this would be too short for me, this would be, or do you want?
I think it's something that we've talked about a lot and brought up a lot of different ideas, like.
I'm just trying to figure out how to write it.
Okay, instead of armpit to armpit, shoulder to shoulder? I'm the only one here who's having an issue with armpit to armpit. But there's gonna be some other
Shoulder to
family.
shoulder is the same.
So if it said clothing must cover the entire midriff with material that covers front, back, tops and sides. Then it's up to the administration to decide if that coverage is sufficient based on that body type, because
And,
I
and,
have
and
a
as,
shirt that's gonna look a heck of a lot different than if Miss Solano puts it on. And that's just, I mean, and so to start like saying like V-necks, no, like it's hard to do that. I mean,
Even with, and I know it, probably focuses more on the females. I know we're not supposed to use female, male, but you know, I'm just looking at the fashion out there, the shirts that they're wearing right now. And a lot of them do come here, or they're down a little. So restricting it all up here, I mean, even as a parent, you know. Yeah, I think it might be too much.
I think anatomically, you're gonna have some pretty low armpits.
I don't know, you'd have to point those out.
I think they'll be obvious.
I don't know, is it obvious at the?
does
think-
that-
I think if we do shoulder to shoulder, my polo shirt might be in.
yeah, it's good.
I'm fanning, it's dress code,
Your
This
your
is
dress
sad.
code is Patty.
because you're, that's what I'm saying, I'm just saying, that's where. I think just for you. Think about shoulder to shoulder and,
Nathan?
No.
that's better.
I'm just trying to move this along. I did an example, maybe you can tell me, Brad.
The entire midriff.
The second one, clothing must cover the entire mid. I know I'll have to address another area, but this is just.
Midriff with material that covers the front.
It's inappropriate.
Shoulders, should we mention shoulder?
Sure, I think there's.
The head and shoulder.
That are acceptable. Have shirts or
Use that as our.
females are acceptable.
Heck of a lot, depending on what we have.
Mm-hmm.
Pero si yo, o sea, que me digan que quieren.
These guys can just say, man.
It's good with this.
Then how?
What about tops and bottoms must adequately cover students' front and back area? And then that way it's,
That's on there already, front and back torso.
no, we took the word torso off, so we would just replace torso with area.
Yeah, right, what area?
Body,
What area of the front and back?
Entire.
entire front and back area, and then that way it- the.
So shorts and skirts are out?
No, we're just talking about tops right now.
Tops.
We haven't even gotten to the
Not in
bottom.
that sentence, you said clothing must cover the front and back area.
Yeah, be more specific.
Well, no, you guys be more
Yeah.
specific.
I said torso.
I thought we had it,
Torso.
I liked the bullet before, but,
Which one was the bullet?
do a little,
Okay. This one?
Remove torso, then,
another one you just, yeah, that one.
yeah, then you're talking
We
about
could-
your front and
We can
back.
fine tune that. Clothing must cover the entire midriff, which is this area. Material that covers the front, back and sides, so the front, back and sides. Cause that midriff to me is the stomach area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The back, as far as tying a blouse behind them, open back. Am I getting that right? And the
Yeah.
back and sides.
I think I should put tops should cover. Or do we want to say clothing? Oh, yeah, cause then they'll wear dress if I use the word top. So, show up. Go ahead,
So
Del.
looking at another district, they're saying, while standing and sitting.
What's that email?
Say it again?
It says, while standing and sitting.
That's specific.
That's specific.
Okay.
I don't know.
The issue that,
So when I sit.
When I said it's covered.
I think it's, that's more for bottoms, like shorts and skirts, that standing or sitting and.
And I think it also has with the midriff, because when you sit down, you know, it kind of goes up in the back or whatever.
So raise your hands.
Mm-hmm, you raise your hands, remember, when you see.
Yeah, we'll have the table. The remainder of Tom's. Did the a second study session at some point.
To be. This is, I thought I heard, athletic attire is excluding athletic attire.
It's right here.
It's on the bottom.
Is inconsistent with or prohibited by the course, program, or co-curricular activity.
That sounds. Okay.
It means it may be prohibited when.
So if someone is wearing something that violates this, but it's consistent with their co-curricular, then it would be okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So what the way we.
Singlet's okay.
Yeah.
If it. Your basketball player wears things.
Tiny shorts are okay.
Not during class.
I'm running.
So I think it would be prohibited when it does not cover the student's torso, shoulders, midriff, back,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Does that make more sense, Brad, if I do it this way? Midriff, back, what other areas do you want covered?
You're not gonna put cleavage?
Well, no, when it does not adequately cover the student's torso, shoulders, midriff, back, front. I think that's just what we call it, front.
Just.
Or chest, okay.
Is.
What was the last thing, Heather? Did you say another?
And chest, whatever your last word is. But
I know, I didn't know if that was it. Did I cover every body part?
Or good with that?
I don't know with the shoulders, are we?
Well, that would be, they don't use, spaghetti straps.
Spaghetti straps.
That would include the spaghetti straps and.
I think we should say no tube tops and then just end that period.
Well, the way that we're writing it is what it's not covering. It can be prohibited when it doesn't cover what areas.
Mhm.
What are the?
That would include the tubes and spaghetti straps and. all
You can
that.
have tops that will cover, like really, you have like no cleavage up to here, and then you have your cap, but like a piece of your shoulder, it's going to be.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So you're on a.
Yes, I think that's fine.
It's still on that, right?
I would, this is not okay.
Well, according to this, no. It exposes the shoulders.
That should, yes.
Because it's not a spaghetti strap.
Getting shoulder.
But,
The way they're saying it.
we have a policy saying.
But that's fine.
No, it's fine, but they won't. Why is that okay? Her shoulders are showing. So unless if we leave it general and just say.
Between that and ornaments, I know.
So which one should we take away so this is okay?
Love it.
We do, it's hot, you guys. I mean, the kids have a right to.
They're gonna tell you too.
Well, right, I'm saying.
I need to wear a bikini top.
All that is sleeveless and can sleeveless clothing be permitted?
If they can show their shoulders, no, that would be sleazy.
I don't want the shoulder thing in, so for me it works.
I think that Polio looks professional.
Yeah.
And a student with that same shirt would look professional.
Yeah, I agree.
No, cover
Yeah.
up.
I think we should table this and, I think we should go back and think and then.
we should go through and accept the recommended changes. We did a lot of work for that today. And then we can come back if you want to change them, like Mr. Kramer said. The document can always come back and change it.
So what would you prefer that we just leave this line, just the way it is, or do you want to pull this line out?
I would take off
Shoulder.
torso and shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Because the midriff is the area that we're worried about.
Yeah, but then they can start talking about your back.
The midriff is still right here.
Yeah, take out, because the torso goes up to your neck. This is your torso.
What if we just said exposes the wearer's midriff and back and then go from there?
That's fine.
As we go forward?
We don't have to dress code, John.
And the addition of school.
Yes.
So it would be everything in red, Shannon?
Such a pretty red.
So they can see the very first sentence I added. So we would be adding that.
The, school of, right, to determine, yes, we agreed with that.
Yeah.
I mean, John's.
We can change, make any, just. There, that's Mr. Okay.
Let me see.
All right, so then we would then move to adopt
Policies.
the motion to.
So do I hear-
Policies.
Do I hear a motion to update and adopt policies 5302 and 5305 and student handbook section 2, page 3 with the recommended changes from today's study session?
So moved.
Motion second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Mr. Kramer, please.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We have no further business to discuss. This meeting is adjourned at 12:02.
We have a new cell phone policy.
Yes.
Yes.